Nothing like a half hour, but. You just remember to close YouTube once it loads.
Alrighty.
Okay,
Well, after much to do, I think we are ready to rock.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Minnesota Planning Commission Board of Adjustment for Tuesday, March 2nd. And because of a technical difficulty, we'll be starting at 5:30 p.m. tonight. Roll call, please. Josh Young,
Aaron Baseman,
Sean Weldon,
Maggie Wentler.
Dave Reese, Joe Hull, Stephen Timblin.
are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
so moved.
A second, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Next is to approve the meeting minutes for February 3rd, 2026. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
I have none.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Next item is an open forum. I don't think we have anyone else here on the Zoom
Other than the applicants.
other than the applicant, so we'll move on. Moving on to public hearings, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Okay. First item was tabled and sent to next month's. And then B is a variance application 006-26, seeking to obtain a variance for reduced setback, construct an additional to the principal residential structure on a road right of way within the Shoreline Residential Zoning District. Subject property is located at 25500 Roy Lane, Nisswa, Minnesota 56468. PID 281000554. Owner applicant Burdick, Stephen and Natalie.
All right, Stephen, are you on with us on there?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. All right, thank you. I guess I'll open it up with my staff report. So as the chair had stated here, we have a variance application with 2 deviations. The dimensions of those would be a reduced setback of 17 feet for the construction of an addition to a residential dwelling due to the road right of way where 20 feet is required, and a variance of a reduced setback of 15 feet to the construction of a deck addition to the road right of way where 20 feet is again required. The survey on this application does depict the 2 additions and their closest proximities to them. The addition itself would be a 16 by 16 foot enclosed addition, the principal residence, and a 16 by 12 covered deck meeting all setbacks. In the review of this, there are no new bedrooms proposed to this structural addition. Closest corner of that enclosure would be 17 feet from the edge of that road right away per the survey. The 6-foot deck addition to the southwest side of the proposed enclosed addition is proposed to continue exterior access to the front of the structure. And the closest corner as proposed would be 15 feet from that road right of way per, again, that survey. Upon my review of the survey, it does depict a staircase going down within that corridor, and it's my interpretation that that would be exempt from that setback requirement as it provides access to an entrance on the dwelling and is proposed to be less than or equal to 4 feet of width. This application was not accompanied with a wetland delineation, and so a condition has been listed as potential to that for that to be performed and then submitted to the city. The city engineer did comment that the Roy Lake Street Improvement Project is on the 2026 schedule, and that the schedule of the work proposed may overlap depending on the applicant's construction schedule. The road contractor schedule, as soon as it's available, can be shared with the property owner if approved. Once again, it's available. That part, if we look at the certificate of survey where it depicts the road right of way, that part of the plat appears to be undeveloped, which is reflected in my site visit visit to the property where we see the cul-de-sac for Roy Lane terminating at the entrance in front of the structure. So it's a unimproved portion of a historic plat in my interpretation, but it still exists as a road right of way through the dedication and is subject to that requirement. That's what I have in my summary analysis of this application.
Does the applicant have anything to add?
No, I don't. Did a good job, Steven.
Thanks, Steve.
Being that we have no other people on the Zoom and there's nobody in the audience here, I'll open and close public comment. Commissioner Member comments. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Well, the only question I had was there a garage that's proposed or something that's gonna be going in as well?
There is on the certificate of survey, a proposed building that depicts the 30 by 40 detached structure. That is meeting all setbacks and has been permitted in the permit history
Okay.
table at the top here. So that was a couple weeks ago. He's got two projects in swing here, one of them being that one that met all setbacks, not requiring a variance, and so the permit has it.
Any other questions?
What happens to the cul-de-sac?
So the cul-de-sac is being, everyone get this handout?
Yeah.
So that's the street plan for the construction of the cul-de-sac. And that shows the drainage of the cul-de-sac is going to be to south, southwest. Kind of in the general direction of where the deck addition is going. And there's like two driveway splits right there. What we're proposing to do there is it's going to be a surmountable curb around the circumference of the cul-de-sac, and that will drain down a short valley gutter down that existing platted but unbuilt right of way. There's a driveway going down it, but and this kind of thing can be adjusted a little bit in the field during construction, but it's something to bring to everybody's attention so you're aware of it and you are aware of where this cul-de-sac pavement is ultimately draining off to, and that's where it's gone in the past. Generally in the direction of addition.
Steve, I can try to share on screen for you here what the city engineer is talking about. I'm going to load up the packet. Also share my screen to the one that is on our wall here. Give me just one moment. Moving slowly. The actual master PDF as well.
In relation to the plan, Dave, is it significant? How much different is it from what's there now and what's being proposed? Is there a dimensional guideline between the two?
As far as the setback is concerned, the distance from the right of way, we don't have any issues with that. We just want to make sure that they know, the applicant knows that the drainage will continue in that direction. And it's going to be paved surface, so
Will it go down that driveway then?
it'll basically, what we're trying to do is split the difference between the two driveways.
But it will have curb now, right?
It'll have surmountable curb around.
So it's gonna increase the
Correction.
velocity of the water coming off there.
Right.
Quite a bit. And naturally that goes downhill there, so.
Yeah.
It's gonna be more water going there than in the past.
All right, so that chute that is being depicted would be this one here at the pointer. Between your neighbor's driveway that goes down that, kind of that platted corridor. And then that little entrance that you have leading up to your one entrance and your soup is proposed to be this concrete chute. The valley that kind of directs the water down through that platted right of way. This is what's depicted there. My understanding and interpretation of this.
Yep.
Would you have any questions or concerns regarding that, Stephen?
No, I don't. I think that follows what it is existing now. You probably couldn't see because of snow, but all the water from the cul-de-sac runs down towards the end of our driveway, and there's actually like an asphalt like trough kind of that runs along that gravel unmaintained road, and then it goes underground in a culvert. Pretty far down the hill. So no water runs back towards our house or this proposed addition.
But it will in the future.
It's our aim to keep it going the direction it's been going. That's what we're trying to do with concrete valley gutter there between the driveways.
If there are no other questions, because this is a variance, we have to move on to our findings of fact, and we will go through a list of questions, and then as a commission, we have to answer yes or no. And the applicant had submitted his responses here, and that's helped quite a bit. I think I like it when applicants do that. So I'll go through the questions here, and then we'll answer as a commission.
Can I make one recommendation as we proceed through that?
Yes.
It's been guided to us by the city attorney that we address each deviation separately, either within each question or going through the list twice for these variances.
The deviation is right of way and then,
For the proposed deck addition being one, and then for the proposed, well, I would start with the proposed and closed addition as that's listed first, and then establish findings for those, and then reiterate or find a new findings, would be the recommendation for the second deviation,
Which is the deck.
which is the deck.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, number one, is the variance in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance and comprehensive plan? Yes or no?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I'd say yes.
Okay, why?
Well, there's. Well, the one just for the variance request, harmony with the purpose of the intent of the ordinance. I guess I look at it as, there's nothing that he's gonna infringe on with the deck or the right of way, so.
Were you talking the enclosure first?
Sure, we'll do the enclosure first.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. Great. Number two, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the city of Nisswa Code of Ordinances?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say yes, based on, again, it's not changing a whole bunch there, it's just changing the size of the existing structure that's there today and doing a little improvement of the property, so.
Okay, I agree. Number three, is the need for a variance due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the property owner? The property is unique. There is a drastic elevation change. So as he noted, there isn't any other place he really could go.
Right. Agree.
Four, will the Will the issue of a variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, it's just a house addition, so I don't think it'll be any major change. And 5, does the need for a variance involve more than economic considerations? I don't believe this involves any economic considerations.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Any other pertinent findings, questions? Okay. Moving back to the top for the deck addition. Is the variance in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance and comprehensive plan? Yes or no?
I would say yes. Agreed.
Yes,
Yes.
because
Same reason as the other one. All right.
it's the same questions.
Yeah,
You only have one set of questions.
no, I know,
Okay.
but I just didn't find my number one to read through what we were at, what the question was. I got lost. Didn't I?
Oh, but only that one back.
No, I know. The board, okay, so the Board of Justice finds the variance request is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance and comprehensive plan. So yes, they're yeah. Again, it's in harmony with the plan.
It's
Come on, help here, guys.
It's in harmony with the building that's already existing.
Yeah,
It's an
Yeah,
extension
it's
of
not
what's already
changing
built.
anything.
Still a residential use too, I may nominate.
It is.
Yeah,
2, is a property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the city code of ordinances?
Say yes, they're planning to use it in a proper manner again, just adding to the existing property and aesthetics and use of their structure.
Agreed. Number 3, is the need for a variance due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the property owner?
I would say no, there's nothing unique. Well, there's some unique things to the property of the landscaping and stuff like that, but no circumstances, I guess.
No. The addition won't obstruct anything with the traffic to access the new building of the roadway.
agree.
Great. Number 4, will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
Yes.
Yes, again, by adding to that, it's just gonna enhance the property and maintain the looks of it.
And 5, does the need for the variance involve more than economic considerations? And again, it does not involve any
Does
economic
not.
considerations. Okay. All right, with those questions covered, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance application 006-26 seeking to obtain a variance to reduce setbacks. Construct an addition to the principal residential structure from the road right of way within the shoreline residential zoning district, subject property located at 25500 Roy Lane, Minnesota. 281-00554. Applicant Stephen and Natalie Burdick. And the facts and findings, and what else were we waiting on? Something to do with the,
The conditions, there's a wetland delineation proposed as a potential condition.
along with that as well.
Still.
Potential condition.
1 to 3 or 1 to 4?
1 through 4.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Next item is new business, a sketch plan review with Dan Marin.
Okay, well, I thank you all for giving me a third opportunity to come before you. First time was back in October, and we've made a lot of revisions since then. We've gone from using Centennial Lane as an access point, which didn't work, and we've pursued now and gotten permission from Crow Wing County Highway Department to come in off of County Road 18. We've tried doing a site plan with single family, duplex, and now triplex. And we did experiment. And I don't know, is Gary Harris here?
He is not here
No.
today.
Oh, he's not. Well, I was going to thank him for, he opened an opportunity that I wasn't aware existed in in your ordinance. But that didn't work out because even though there was some, you were given some leeway with regard to setbacks, you still needed those lots, even though they were shrink wrapped, I guess we called them. They still need to be set back 20 feet from the right of way. So that didn't work. But I appreciate all the guidance and suggestions that you've all made along the way. And I feel that this particular site plan is checking all the boxes. Steve even said it hit the bullseye. I never heard him say that before.
He said it's kind of closer to the bullseye for what we were looking for under the sketch plan reviews leading up to a CUP and a preliminary plat for such a PUD.
Okay, and the original goal with this development, from my standpoint, was and also in conformance with I believe your comprehensive plan over the years has been to provide some workforce housing and entry-level housing. And I think this one does that best of all, because it's the problem in preparing this for the market is to keep the costs down. And this has the shortest road, and of course, the lineal feet of the road all translates into cost, as well as the distribution of utilities, and the fact that we're able to get these on roughly about a 900-foot roadway, and the zero lot lines within the fourplex and the common walls. Those also offer some pretty substantial construction cost savings. So I think this one best fits what I originally started out to do. And I'm hoping that I can get your nod on this, and this is something I shared with Stephen since I met with you last time. I've found out that my eyesight is starting to go, and that my wet AMD in my left eye has migrated to my right eye, and I'm having a real difficult time seeing now. And I've decided to pass this on to another developer, but I'm hoping that we have something that's acceptable as a template or blueprint for an acceptable approach to the development of this parcel. So that's really all I need to do tonight is to see your response to this particular plan.
Do we have any questions? Yeah, Dave.
From the city's standpoint, we'd offer, with this layout, is it your intention that this be private or a public roadway?
It's always been my intention for it to be a public roadway. And
Okay.
you remember we went back and forth. I wanted to have a 50-foot right of way and decided to comply with the 66-foot. I wanted it to be in as much in compliance with your ordinance as I possibly could make it. And I think that just makes it easier in the long haul. This is going to be a common interest community. And I think probably the city is better prepared to take good care of that road than perhaps an association might be.
Okay, so then public roadways would come into the city system being designed and built according to the city standards and for drainage. And
Yes, sir.
then they would, the next thing would be how this development would be serviced with sanitary sewer facilities and water supply. And so if you pass this on to the next developer, they will need to bring plans to the city that clearly show how that will be accomplished and that all these lots can be supported by an independent water supply because the city currently doesn't have that for you. That you will have to do that within your development.
Right. As a matter of fact, this one shows, I don't know if you see these little blue places here. I've actually got 4 of them, so we could use a smaller pump, single phase. But down in the corner where it comes in off of County Road 18, Crowing Power actually has 3-phase. In the event that they wanted to put, I think originally they spec'd a 12-inch well with a 30 horsepower pump. That's also available if that were to be the choice. But I think we have a better chance of supplying all of these 48 units if we use smaller ones and separate them a little bit. And I don't know if they're going to hit the same aquifer or whatever. All of that is always a bit of a crapshoot, I think.
Well, yeah, that's part of the responsibility of the applicant to just demonstrate to the city that the adequate water supply can be provided. When you submit or when your successor submits through the preliminary plat process.
So that'll be some evidence that we require at the next phase, at submission of the CUP for the PUD and for the preliminary plat hearing.
Yes, I understand that. And I'm just wondering if you could give me, I think some of the well drillers have asked me, they said, what do the engineers recommend per 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath unit to be the capacity of the well? Can you give me any guidance on that I could pass along?
I'm gonna jump in quick. Even though the city does not do building inspections, nor do the fire department, these do need to be built to state building code and standard.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure there's a tipping point between a duplex to a triplex where sprinkler systems are required for triplexes and fourplexes. And that means then all of this would need to be sprinklered for these buildings to meet state building code. And then that's going to completely change your whole water supply system, your holding tanks, and that all will be engineered. But then that will be your real driving force behind these your water. So don't quote me, but I would say you're gonna want to check on that probably before you
I
go
have
too
done
much
some
further.
research on that, and they said it is required for fourplexes if the square footage, not including the garages, exceeds 4,500 square feet for the fourplex.
So that's where I think we would look for an example plan set stamped by a certified architect. Is that correct? And
Yes,
engineer?
yes, and the particular plan that I showed the pictures of and the link to are I think around 1,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. But I think my suggestion would be to actually shrink those down even a little bit more to get less cost per square foot, and maybe have some 2 bedrooms mixed in those fourplexes along with 3 bedrooms. And I think it would be very easy to achieve that a square footage of less than 4,500 square foot per building.
Yeah, I'd say that would need to be all checked on.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
Cause then that will be your driver for this water.
Okay, and I suppose who's ever gonna do the water distribution plan, whatever engineer would be addressing that, is correct?
That's correct.
That would be subject to the applicant, find that person and commission that work.
Okay,
One thing to be aware of too is your well becomes a community well after 15 or more units are connected to one well. And that a community well standards to meet the Department of Health state standards are much more comprehensive than well serving fewer units.
right, and initially I addressed that by making the wells supply 12 to 14 units, not to exceed that 15 unit threshold. But I think I've heard from one of our well drillers that I believe it depends on how many units are in the project, not how many are on each well. So that is something that will have to be considered as well.
Does that require an MDH inspection annually?
I believe they had some stringent standards. I haven't read them all.
Yeah,
But-
if it's considered a community water supply system, then they'll likely include stipulations for testing
Water testing, yeah.
and the demand to meet the demand for fire flow or any other demands on the system.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay,
Any other questions, comments? Dan, do you have any more questions or comments?
no, I'm just hoping that this one is, finally we hit one that meets all the requirements of the ordinance. And of course, going forward, I've been taking bids on all of this stuff, thinking that I was going to be the developer, and all that will be passed on to whoever, if and when somebody steps up to take it to fruition.
I have a question. When you spoke with the county on that access point on the county highway, did they say anything about requiring a turn lane?
Yes, and I've actually got that priced in too. I've got a price from Anderson Brothers to provide that. It would be a turn in on the north side going west, approaching the road that we would be using to access.
Okay,
So I'm hoping we haven't missed too much. And I know Steve looks pretty closely at this stuff, and it's comforting to know that if it passes his muster, it's probably pretty good.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Dan.
Next item is chapter 20, land use and development, presentation of draft changes to chapter 20.
Right, we get the Word document up with the red lines in it.
weird. Yeah. It's shoveled. I had a first set of questions, if you want to step and sit on those. There it is.
All right, so pursuant to recommendation from our independent contractor, Chris Pence, on a comparative analysis to how the county addresses land use and development versus how the city addresses land use and development, I've compiled a red line markup version for several different parts of our ordinance. Some of them are more formatting of nature. Some of them are consultant considerations that the city can consider revision to. Some of them were recommendations, and others were things that I've proposed in my review of the ordinance as I've engaged members of the community and contractors. So I'm gonna go through them piece by piece through the track changes as I've tracked every single adjustment in here. You'll see the first one here is just the deletion of a period, some of the formatting stuff that we've inherited through ordinance revisions have been left over. So for those ones, I'm just going to mention them and move on to text changes. One of the recommendations from our consultant was to adjust the certificate of compliance requirements, including all property transfers for a requirement to those times when the city requires those to come in. The language that's stricken right after that, in my interpretation, would be redundant language, as it is not required if a property is connected to the city sewer. So I have proposed striking that.
Quick question with that one.
Go on. Yep.
What happens if it's same property owner, husband and wife, they want to put it in a trust?
The interpretation that we've employed in the past at the county level is that those types of transfers family or sometimes from husband to husband and wife would not be requiring certificate of compliance in these cases.
Can we add that language in there so it's clear?
I can certainly
Yeah,
seek that and add that in there. Absolutely.
now it says for all property
Right,
transfers.
so even if it goes from homeowner to LLC, but it's the owner is the owner. Cause that's pretty common even in these last ones, we've had LLCs, the homeowner, so I think that language should be clearly stated
Sure.
about that.
Yeah, I'll look at how the county specifically has the language in there. Pair with the city attorney on guidance on what type of language should encompass those familial transfers, as I understand is what you're talking about. Yep. I can certainly engage that as we move this document forward for additional red lines. Anybody else? Yep. The second area that I added some adjustments would be under our land use district standards, section division 3, section 20-81, regarding the purpose and intent of individual districts. Linden Lakeshore Residential Overlay District is a historic neighborhood established by plat back in, I want to say 1916, that most of the lots within that area were platted at 50 feet in width, which would not be conforming to current shoreline rule. As such, they do come with certain allowances under statute for those pre-existing nonconformities and for the non-conforming lots themselves as well. My interpretation of that would be encouragement that these move forward to be rezoned to shoreline residential over time as uses come forward from the existing language that's in here that says newly created parcels will be required to meet all shoreline residential provisions. So subdivisions of these neighborhoods would need to meet those shoreline rule classifications for lot width and also our ordinance minimums. So that would be just intent language that I put in there. For the purpose of rezones, it would only follow logically that district should be treated as an extension of shoreline residential if someone wanted to rezone one in the middle and move towards that.
What about the commercial property
That is a
located with that, in that area?
So the properties that currently have Linden Lakeshore residential zoning are residential only. There's commercial waterfront properties down in that region as well. They're neighboring to it. But they are not beholden to that individual district standards for uses, setbacks, anything like that.
So none of the commercial properties would be required, or encouraged to do this.
Correct.
Okay.
Looks good.
Looks good. Next adjustment was in regards to the commercial waterfront district's language that's within it. I paired up with the previous versions of this. This language hasn't been changed in quite some time since it was onset. I tried to take and eliminate some of the things that might be targeting one particular entity, as you might have multiple different uses and properties that have commercial waterfront designation versus that language that points to the family resort. For that language, I was just striking that to eliminate any potential for targeted language and make it more objectively phrased. That wouldn't be to say that golf courses and associated uses would be stricken from this. It's just that resorts and similar water-oriented uses that could be inclusive of golf courses, but generally overarching, the commercial waterfront intent is for those resort capacities. Another thing that I identified in that chapter was this sentence here that begins, as such, currently states all uses shall require a conditional use permit for expansion of the development. That contradicts with our use table, where we have other use pathways forward that are not just a conditional use permit. So to that, I propose a change that strikes all and inserts generally after the word shall. Because more often than not, it would require a conditional use permit, and this would be a little less restrictive in that lens and eliminate that contradicting language. General feedback for that.
I agree. I agree with that.
All right, so for the use table, it'll take us through each alteration that I proposed in here. For clarity, the P district here refers to our public and recreation sector. All those properties that are owned by the city or the DNR for that zoning designation of public and recreation. To that end, I propose adding a conditional use permit pathway for a business, commercial / retail. As I look across our land, I guess, that the city owns here, we have the pickle factory over here that could be akin to a business, commercial / retail. So it's either a nonconformity where it could potentially not have or be a prohibited use, a nonconformity that shall be discontinued or not expanded in the future, or we introduce a C for a conditional use permit pathway that would allow this entity to entertain such an application. So introducing of a pathway in this case. Any general feedback?
What triggers that? Like, because
To that,
with like a business and commercial, so does it change hands, lease agreements, rent, for the CUP, because outside of a building permit?
so a conditional use permit runs with the land is in perpetuity, whereas an interim use permit would be subject to those terminating events such as a date, such as transfer of ownership, elimination or expiration of a lease, subject to re-upping again on that interim use permit on whatever event terminates it.
Okay, I know that has been a little unclear. And then that gets into like even the ERC credits and stuff like that. This person comes in, it's allowed to have a business operating in here, but they put in a restaurant or a laundromat or something, and then it triggers all that criteria. Does that cover that?
So the ERC calculations are subject to chapter 28, where it defines how they're calculated and when they need to be reviewed again.
Correct, but does this start the trigger for that? Is that what you're trying to accomplish with this? Or what's your goal that you're trying to accomplish with it?
My goal with it is to address existing non-conforming uses such as, for example, other properties, businesses that would meet that definition upon land that is currently zoned public and recreation. So other locations, I'm going to pick on, let's say, Spirits of Nisswa. That one is currently upon the highway business zoning district and would not be, that would not be impacted by this change, but this will be only to address the public and recreation zone properties. And it's my interpretation that if the city wanted to entertain a new building over here, for example, with the same model in the future, having that cell blank indicates that use is prohibited and we could not entertain an application to even do so.
Okay.
Clinic Hospital, there was a dash in front of the C. Not sure why that was there. Found it. Proposed striking it. Similarly, commercial storage facilities, a dash in front of the C. Proposed striking. I assume there's no concerns with that. Just trying to clean up formatting and track changes caught it. So
Looks like a report card.
So minus C, that's an interesting grade.
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose Maggie mentioned something important here. These abbreviations are set up here for what they intend and what they mean. So this is a land use charter. The letter P designates a permitted use. The letter C, that conditional use. I is an interim use. A means that that use is allowed without any type of permit that's required. You still have to comply with ordinance standards such as impervious surface coverage. But if somebody wanted to pave a little concrete patio meeting all setbacks for a basketball hoop, would not require a permit from my office. However, it would still be up against the impervious coverage maximums and other standards in our ordinance for its location.
So
And then
the,
blank is.
so the C minus by the public storage buildings, right? Is there still a moratorium written into this language like there was a few years ago with the city, or has that been cleared up or lifted? I haven't read that language. So I'm meaning, if it says here that it's a conditional use, but we have other language saying it's prohibited, we need that to clear both of those up.
To me, my question would be, what was the language that put it in? Is it under the standards that are pertaining to commercial storage? Or let's see, that was the commercial storage facility. That's what you're talking about there in that regard.
Correct, yeah.
Within the,
So that
Highway
has had other current language. I'm not sure if it's been cleaned up or that has been prohibited
okay,
within the city.
so the city could adopt an.
You know about that?
Yeah.
That's still in place?
I don't know.
Because if here we're saying it's a C, and it's conditional use, but over here it says it's prohibited, then
Was that a planning and zoning action or was that a city council action? And I mean,
both.
Yeah.
Both. There's a mechanism called an interim ordinance that.
I'm just saying, what is there currently? Like, was there?
That's the question that
I don't recall when we talked about it and I.
No, you might have been around. I know when it happened. I know what triggered it happening. But once again, it's language that needs to be looked at specifically with that one because it has existed. Do you recall when that happened? And where is that information? Because I believe right now, from what I know, if somebody came in and applied for that one right there and it's a C, over here, there's language written where it says, no, this is a no-go.
Let's do a quick search of this document for commercial storage. And see how many hits we get.
So it happened after the storage units went in behind Wendy's.
Yes, that is, yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
The triggering thing.
You just did before? Or
After. Because we wanted to not have Nisswa filled with storage units.
And so they just said, no more to anything. And then the way the language got written, also too, that has prohibited, that kind of went into the 2,500 square foot for larger buildings, houses, and it kind of created a domino effect. And that language is stuck in different places, but it has been messy and meddled with, I'll say, right? But that's what triggered it.
Yeah.
You remember, Maggie? So anyhow, I just bring that up.
To that end, it could be that there's probably a multitude of eventualities that could have led to that. It could have been mechanized through either an interim ordinance, like a moratorium ordinance, or it could have been a chapter 20 revision that eliminated that and altered section 20-187 here that lists out the standards for those units. My gut tells me that it was either of those two things, but a moratorium on it, interim ordinance. Don't quote me on the duration that is the maximum, but I think that it's 12 months that such a document or such an ordinance can exist without taking the larger strides within our land use and development chapter of our ordinance.
Yeah, so I don't know what was put in place, but I think that's something that needs to be hunted up
Mhm.
and addressed at the same time when we fix it there.
Uh,
So,
we do that too.
but
Yeah, look for such a doc.
if you go back to when the permit was given to Sullivan down there to do that, it was kibosh straight after that was granted.
I recall that. I just
You
don't.
recall that?
I recall
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
I don't know the details here.
So anyhow, I'm just, that's one of my goals would be if we're gonna clean up one spot, then we gotta go and fix it another.
So we do have two zoning designations in that chart that call that out. It's open space residential and highway business. There are stipulations within this language, section 20-187, that have all of the requirements that we would be reviewing and looking for in their plan set. Such as not exceeding 50% of the parcel area, regardless of the zoning designation. Highway business, it currently has an impervious surface coverage maximum of 50%. The open space residential district has a hard cap of 15% in their impervious surface coverage. So to me, this language looks redundant and wasn't part of the scope of this ordinance revision phase, but happy to take guidance from, this body in conjunction with city council on, hey, let's tackle this. I would just encourage that we try to do it on build it into a second phase of ordinance revision. And while we open up any section, I like to look at it comprehensively, look at all of the different bullet points, figure out, okay, what are the standards in here? How are those impactful to development? And what language could nominate in its place if we want to take a look at changing any of it? But great point.
Yeah, that's fine. I just bring it up because it needs to be comprehensive, looked all the way through, and if it wasn't part of this ordinance change, great. I'm saying it's a trigger to, here's the next rabbit hole to chase down to find.
Right. At first glance, Joe, when you look at these standards, is there anything that you,
Oh, I haven't been reading that. I don't know. I just know what's taking place, and so I know if somebody walked in here right now and you dug.
I would process it as a CUP, just like the land use and development ordinance, absent a moratorium ordinance that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so there was language written like that, because there have been past people that have been turned down, and so the language exists somewhere that was put into place. We just need to hunt it up.
I will look for a moratorium ordinance because everything else should be in chapter 20 for this use. The use pathway exists here. If there's a moratorium ordinance that supersedes this document, I'm unaware of it right now. So.
Sure.
It's too bad they couldn't have dates on when they change things, just so you know when they change, and it would be messy, but
As I've uploaded documents to Municode, you'll see it on the most recent land use and development one. I uploaded the markup version so you can see what language was replaced or added to, stricken through completely. So I am taking efforts as we go to make that transparent. So
That helps
I
them.
mean, like I noticed on the one on the commercial storage, it mentioned it has to be pavement throughout. I can't remember, right? Because the U-Haul one, is that all pavement or is that dirt? Dirt. So there it says it, but yet it's not. You know what I mean?
what was the ordinance at the time when that use?
Well, that's what I mean. That's where it would be nice that because you're going, oh, okay.
But yeah. Yeah, I think that there's probably a lot to be looked at that too, because, if you want pavement throughout the whole thing or dirt or runoff or,
It really messes with the impervious too, if you have pavement throughout the.
right. So,
Gravel's impervious now.
right. But if you did,
Now, they used to not.
Right. Anyhow, sorry, I didn't mean to get off, but it's just things like that I know need looked at more in detail.
All right, I think I lost my track changes, so I'm gonna go back up here and reset that search here. Get back to where we were. And there we are. So commercial storage facilities, next proposed change. Again, dwelling units above commercial uses, a dash there, saw it, deleted it. This far most right district was the public or the PDD district, the planned development district. So in order to achieve our final approval from the DNR and floodplain ordinance, we had to identify standards, and that was done with Chris Pensett last year in February. So we added this column. In my review of this and revisiting this charter, I identified that home business and home occupations were prohibited uses in there. And to me, it made sense, being that they have residential uses within that sector, to introduce that same allowance for an interim use permit on a home business and an allowed use on a home occupation if someone wanted to build birdhouses in their garage and sell them on Etsy for $30 each, for example. The stark difference between those two uses is mainly employees coming and going and commerce occurring at that location. So the employees has historically been the trigger for that use and interpretation. So that is my summary of those two collectively. Any questions around?
So you're adding that to that last column.
Correct.
Planned development district allow mixed use. So.
Because there is a big overlap with that in town.
Mixed use is processed with a conditional use permit. Yes.
So mobile food unit, what's happening up there?
We'll get there.
Oh, sorry, I thought you went past it.
Nope. I'm scrolling past because we talked about.
Got it, okay.
Multi.
My apologies.
Process PUDs. And
So
multifamily beauty is still a C up there as well. So
is the mixed use going to be addressed more? Is that a plan? And that's maybe topic of conversation for everyone that will need to be addressed.
So how mixed use is identified in our ordinance, without diving into a really extensive interpretation of it, is that the base floor area for density, if you're proposing lots and things like that, it cannot exceed 45% of the use that's not otherwise allowed in the district against this charter. So when we take forward a mixed use PUD, we evaluate whether or not I'll pick on highway business, for example. We don't allow single family homes in the highway business district. And so we would be looking for whether or not the footprint of those single family homes proposed exceeds that metric of 45%. So there's nothing in our ordinance right now that would prohibit it. It just needs to meet that standard and criteria for occupancy of area.
And they already exist in the highway business district, single family homes.
And they can,
Yeah.
through rezoning or establishment of official controls. You have a couple.
I just bring it up because we've had plan review presented twice now to the city, specifically dealing with that, with mixed uses. That, the plan review, doesn't fall anything within this. That's been presented to us twice, and so we're gonna have to address it sooner than later. You know, I mean, more of this will be coming. So I just bring it up now that,
Is there a project in specific that you're talking
well,
about?
yeah, like over there on the Boberg property that was introduced at the city and to us. So a prime example, that doesn't fall in any of this right here, right now, what the presentation was. That is a prime
So
example
we had a sketch plan review and
of the sketch plan review.
And there, in regards to that, the residential would need to, again, meet that base floor area, 45%, not exceed that in order to green light it for that mixed use. There's other potential hurdles, such as what the property is currently zoned, if it's got a combination of zoning, whether open space is being designated.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to talk about all the rules with that too, but I'm just saying it's going to need to be adjusted as a bigger whole. Also, the city property down south that the city currently owns, that's going to need to be addressed for there. So I'm not trying to get into the weeds on it. I'm just saying right now, if we're looking at this, we need to know, and that would be another to do sooner than later, because there's those two potential projects right now that even, some of the rules that you were just talking about doesn't apply to probably either location that we're going to need to address. And also do density requirements too, the density requirements, especially down maybe on the city property. We do curb and gutter and storm sewer and whatever, increasing that from 50% with the mixed use and all of that. So I'm just saying as we move ahead with some of this stuff, those are two things coming down the pipeline that we're going to have to address with this.
So my interpretation of ordinance review and revisions should be in harmony with our comprehensive plan that we've adopted. The flow chart of development and planning within a municipality should flow straight down from, let's call constituents at the top of that hierarchy, through city council, to the boards and commissions that are established, to city staff, to write or create the comprehensive plan. Development should then flow from there to a zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance should drive constructively development. We would not be able to propose ordinance language responsive to a specific plan set because we haven't received a very specific plan set that can be entertained by a CUP or a preliminary plat hearing. That order of operations, we should be careful as a city for how we navigate that. Each one of those features should almost function as a check valve in that process, where we want the comp plan to be very well vetted, thorough, and comprehensive enough to drive our ordinance changes. For example, in there, we could designate a proposed land use district or future land use district, and we should be aiming towards rezones that are in harmony with that, development that are within harmony to that. Those, in my interpretations, are strides that are before the city amidst a flux of administrative turnover. Something that the city should take a serious look at. With regards to these other potential developments, such as the city-owned land, the recently proposed development north of 77, we should be handling those independently with our current ordinance and evaluating it against the criteria, see what hurdles present itself, and then try to move up amidst that flux, if that makes sense. Let's see, next we're down to mobile food units. I did introduce a particular division further down in the land use chart. These would be the districts at which we would be looking to introduce a use pathway for them if we choose to adopt that division or article as we move forward. Notice that the use is completely outside of the residential district. It would be my recommendation to list that as a prohibited use. And there's language in that division that we can get to that talks about separation buffer requirements and things like that. As I look at this, I notice also that I designated a P versus language that's within that division nominating an interim use permit. So if we adopt it, I would also suggest doing this to all of those cells, P or an I, subject to the criteria that are depicted in there. I wanted to provide one that is both administrative with less, I guess, delay on such a application, but also if the standards comply an interim use pathway. For intents and purpose of navigating through this, I'm going to keep going to tracking next, and we can come back to this once we get to that division.
So this is a whole new one that you're adding. And how is a mobile food unit different than like a craft vendor? Is it the mobile food unit? Is it the person selling the peanuts?
That would
Different
be,
crafts?
I would look at that as a retail use. If you wanted to add in some type of language that would be housed within the definition section of mobile food unit, which is probably one of the last sections that we'll get to through this track changes. Then we can certainly add nominal language that can pivot. So this entire topic of mobile food units is very fluid and subject to guidance, recommendations from you guys. Changing the buffers if you guys think that that's a good idea.
So past permits that have been handed out to businesses, residents to,
Would
allow activities like that on their property, that would still overrule, and they would not now be
previously
required
approved stuff would be,
the new food unit. How in the world are we gonna keep that separate?
well, through someone like me that tracks those administrative. So again, property rights are something that get recorded through an IUP.
I see that becoming a huge mess. That would be my own opinion.
Well, as we move forward with get through the rest of them and come back to this one.
Sure, and we'll dive into the language. I mean, it sounds kind of scary right now. Let's get to that section,
Yeah.
progress, and then
Yeah.
we can have a more in-depth
That's
conversation.
what I'm recommending.
Planned unit developments. Here I identified an ordinance conflict where up here we have dwelling multifamilies proposed as a PUD allowable through a conditional use pathway in the highway business district with a C up here. And a prohibited use being a blank cell here. My interpretation is that that would be something that might be allowable potentially in the highway business district. And so I nominate a C in there. The other alternative would be to eliminate the C under multifamily PUDs above. To eliminate the contradiction in that language.
So get rid of it completely or add it to here so that it's,
They're in harmony with each other and not a conflict or contradiction.
Yeah, it has to be in both spots. That's part of the problem.
We get the power cord here. So that. Be all wrapped up in cords.
Yeah, you got a lot of them.
Blow the circuit breaker in here, then I'll shut down everything.
This will be the next one you shut down. That is an interesting power source on that thing.
Nope.
There you go.
All right. I'm on that. Hyphen before the C again. Office, business, professional, and restaurants, similar to the business, commercial / retail. To avoid a conflict or address non-conforming uses that are existing, I propose a C in both of those. For the public and recreation district. Similar conversation akin to the C up here for business, commercial / retail.
And so this would allow restaurants where?
Public and recreation. City-owned property would be in DNR owned property. It would,
So we could put a mini bar in the park at the landing.
well, there are certain state statutes and stuff that allow municipalities to have certain uses that they do and operations that they do. If the
I
state.
was just asking, that's what that would be.
Well, setbacks are a conditional use permit.
Okay.
Questions? Nothing. Hyphen before temporary commercial structures, post strike. Temporary structures, uses commercial. I'm nominating an interim use permit pathway for that use to occur within the commercial waterfront district. If an entity wanted to do something on a temporary basis through an interim use permit, similar to what we do central business, highway business, this use pathway would greenlight them for that review by the planning commission.
You have that defined.
Yeah, it's under temporary structures. Yep. Basically adding CW to the sentence that says in the highway business and central business, adding commercial water to reflect the land use charter.
So would that be like, now I can rent a space to somebody with their wheelhouse for the summer?
So we don't have a rental ordinance that we strictly regulate at the city. That would be simply the use that's getting placed there. If they wanted to short-term rental it and do it on Airbnb, that would be something subject to our short-term rental license ordinance that we currently defer to the county. So I have little to weigh in on that. That would not be the intent of putting the I there in my review, but it would come into a review of the nature of what the commercial business is or what the use is and would be before you guys as a temporary commercial structure.
Would it be, well, I guess we can talk about it when we read your language on it.
Okay. Vehicle body repair, hyphen before that, and also under warehousing, I'm going to breeze through those formatting ones. Our setback table for structure setback, section 20-89. Consultant recommendation was to reduce that to be in harmony with the county's ordinance of 15 feet per setback to a wetland. In so doing, I've stricken the 30s, put 15 there. The asterisks here refer down to this. I propose striking that as well. I find it to kind of conflict in certain water bodies and uses that occur in shoreline development. A shoreline alteration permit usually occurs down near the water body where there might also be wetlands. Typically that would involve vegetation removal, excavation, or structural placement such as a water-oriented accessory structure, but if they're placing it on the wetland, that also has to go through the county review for wetland impact, either through exemption or replacement, and meet those standards through the Wetland Conservation Act. So to me, the city does not regulate WACA. Language within our ordinance that would force us otherwise becomes an administrative hurdle for us to jump. Track and enforce.
What was the county standard for the rec area down?
Rec use area is in harmony with ours, 30% the lot width.
Okay. Good one.
This was an indent. The natural environment was further to the left. I moved it to be in line with general development and recreational development in that sequence. Section 20-92, buildings, maximum height allowed and frontage on a public road. We have language within our subdivision ordinance that says that a lot has to have frontage to a road or be provided access with an easement. We can't landlock properties with subdivision. So I don't know how it got put into a building height table, but I propose striking it because it exists elsewhere in our ordinance. Then we move on. Accessory structure size, setbacks, and permit requirements. This is the section which we had the consultant review and provided some feedback as to how the county regulates it. The city regulates it in a much more official fashion and designates the uses that occur. Where, how much, what the max square footage is and things like that. The consultant recommendation was to allow for small structures such as a garden shed to be processed through an allowed use and not be requiring a permit pathway for that. So it was his recommendation that we introduce that language, and that's where you see it based there under generally for that use. What it does specifically is that you can have up to 2 accessory structures totaling no more than 160 square feet. Structure placement has to meet all setbacks regardless of non-permit.
160 square feet total for both structures or per structure?
Totaling no more than 160 square feet cumulative is the language and intent in their ordinance and the recommendation from the consultant. If you would prefer that I put cumulative.
Yeah, we need, because that's a little open-ended to read.
Sure.
And so 288 by 10 structures are fairly small. It's not a common little storage shed size at all.
What this does is allow someone to do so without all of the other stipulations of our ordinance, such as getting their septic inspected. Chicken coops, for example, would be within this allowance.
Can we up the square footage size? You know, a 10 by 12, 120 square feet is what is allowed for shoreline auxiliary structure. So two 120 square foot structures, a 10 by 12 building, that is a more common size for a building.
Yeah, 120 comes from shoreline rule, so it is a very common manufactured size if you wanted to just order one. It's a common one.
Without looking or knowing all of this inside and out, people are using carport type stuff. How does that fall into, is that a whole, am I opening a can of worms? I'm not meaning to do that, but is that a small enough structure
I
that?
know that type of topic has been a contentious issue at other public hearings, such as at the county, whether they should be regulated, how they should be regulated. The technical answer to that is they are a structure placement if they are placed in the residential district outside of how we define temporary in our ordinance, which is 7 days.
Then over the years, they become a guest house.
Yeah.
An AC unit.
Depending upon what side of town you live on. I guess I would up that because they're, it's not a common size.
Right.
And to be more in line and uniform with sizes and languages, and then also as you drive around and you think of these buildings, that 10 by 12 or 8 by 12 or something like that is a lot more common size.
The county is 160 though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
If you opt to the notion of the concept of increasing it, I would encourage you to also introduce individual allowances and then accumulative.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, because if you up it, then they can have two 10 by 20.
Or a single 240 or whatever, which might not necessarily be the intent on this allowance.
Not that I guess it matters. It all depends on where it's at, but
Yeah. Well, it's still gotta meet all the other setbacks,
Yeah.
previous, or,
so if they want to, yeah. I thought the same thing. It seemed all at first. Guess I just, you try.
But if it's matching county, I guess that's my recommendation is to try to follow that, I guess, but.
And I think that was the intent of this,
Yeah.
most of the changes in this version. Touching on what's next in my revision to this section. It'd be my recommendation not to make super extreme actions on it, where we just open up a can of worms and now all of a sudden we have to figure out how to close it, because then at that point that we have a bunch of structures that have popped up everywhere. If we change it and dial it down, all of those became unpermitted, but non-conforming structures.
Well, we could also put a lot size, meaning somebody has 5 acres. 2 buildings at 120 square feet on 5 acres versus, a 0.75 acre lot or something like that, but it's still gotta meet all the setbacks and.
It'd be a harder one to exercise administratively, absent requiring surveys that really show us exactly what that is. I mean, we can use GIS, but GIS is largely disclaimed.
How are you gonna figure out the setbacks and pervious coverage without a survey though?
The applicant has to demonstrate where the property line is, and if the applicant says the property line is there between that post and that post, and they draw a tape, then it's their responsibility through demonstrating that they're meeting the ordinance requirements. If it comes to pass that they didn't meet it, then we're in an enforcement scenario where I have to try to seek voluntary compliance with it. They can apply for an after-the-fact variance. That's a mess in most cases. So to allow discretion, that would be my recommendation to avoid lot size minimums that allow for greater uses, because that would complicate our tables, complicate the administrative work in administering, enforcing the language.
Was the plan here? I mean, we might need to take multiple meetings to go over this under new business rather than trying to hash it all out tonight.
We're probably.
So, I mean, you have to check on a few things and your list is already kind of big. So, I mean, how far do we want to go?
I would like to cruise through this and at least get you guys to the end point, and
Okay.
maybe you table your recommendation to city council to April.
Okay.
But I'd like to get to the checkered line here, and then You guys can marinate on it, think about it more over a month, and then we bring it back. That would be my recommendation.
These are all good steps, positive steps of you, but you know, just if we're gonna do it,
You should do it.
have
right. I'd rather
that
take more
adequate time to think through it, talk through it, think about it, look about what's out there.
Mhm.
So,
Like you said, we could breeze through it,
Right,
marinate on the 160, for example, and
yep. Trying to avoid rabbit holes as they exist and
Yeah.
pop up through here.
And others that we always have, we're maybe gonna come back to, so.
Sure, yep. All right, the next guy here. Because of changes in the table, and I eliminated this change, it says that the accessory structures must meet OHW unless otherwise provided in this section, and the setbacks required in this section, and the cumulative square footage of all detached accessory structures on a residential property may not exceed 2,500 square feet without a conditional use permit, except in the OSR. What that means, if you look at what the changes are in this table, is we had two rows that talked about square footage allowances, 1,201 to 2,500 twice. The only change in between that uses was the cells within the rows and whether or not the accessory structure color matched the principal structure. My recommendation to avoid extremes is to try something out by dialing it one notch at a time. So where we had uses that were prohibited in this table, being a blank cell, I introduced a conditional use permit pathway. Where it was a conditional use permit pathway, I dialed it back also to hinge on a permit where it's less of a conditional use permit pathway, still to hold into impervious surface coverage maximums. But the scenario where somebody has a 40-acre lot that's open space residential, they could come in for a permit on it as long as it meets all setbacks in this proposed language. For a structure that's over 2,500 square feet. However, that's still going to have to meet all of the requirements elsewhere. Is the septic system sized enough for that if they're doing guest quarters in there? What are the uses? And we would dive into each of those on its own merit, but over the counter when it is logical. Where it was a conditional use permit, it's now has the option for a permit as long as all things comply. And I kept the harmony of, while we did a conditional use permit pathway when it didn't match the house color. And a permit when it does meet the house color. So I onset those changes. And that was my intent. If you identify anything in this, if you take the month, I would encourage you to read this, really marinate on what it means, and come back and we can have a more detailed conversation around this because I know this one has been contentious.
yeah, my initial thing is that all needs to be struck. 2,500 square feet. Being named the last time a variance wasn't given. This rule has been put in there. I can't tell you a time when it was actually followed since it went in. Also, do the history on it. The history on it, and happened after a building got built in a neighborhood where a past person didn't want to get it
So
built.
this wouldn't completely strike that notion. What this would do is it would allow a conditional use permit. Or
I'm saying the whole 2,500 square feet needs to be completely struck out of there again. The county doesn't have it at their level. Also, too, this has been a hot conversation. I won't speak for the council. It has been a hot conversation at the council, where I know a lot of the other council members have been in favor of striking this whole 2,500 square foot notion. So
what would it be? So what are you saying?
we already have provisions in the standard rule. Somebody wants to come in and build a building. We already have the setback. We already have the pervious coverage. We already have, the sewer sizing requirements. We already have all the criteria in place for this. And if somebody wants to come in and build a 5,000 square foot building and they already meet the setback, the pervious coverage, all that stuff, why can't they build the 5,000 square foot building? Why would they need to jump through an extra loophole like this? Once again, the history on this is important and it doesn't exist at the county level. It only exists here in the city of Cross Lake. And Nisswa and Cross Lake. It's been dialed back in Cross Lake too. But the whole 2,500 square feet, what difference does it make if it's 2,500 square feet or 3,500? We already have all the other criteria in place. Come in and get a permit. Don't make somebody jump through more requirements.
I think the intent on a conditional use permit pathway is to allow a zoning authority to evaluate it for relevant conditioning. What that means is that if you are proposing it near a sensitive feature like a bluff, this body can elect conditions like screening.
But once again, that's already, the bluff rules are already established. They already come in play, no matter if it's a 2,500 square foot building or a 3,500 square foot, the heel and toe of a bluff. All that comes into play. The whole notion of limiting the size of the structure is what needs to be struck. It's just an overreach of government, in my opinion. That's all that this is, restricting what somebody can do on their property. And then making them jump through an extra loophole. Once again, I will say if we could go back and look, since this went in place, show me a permit that wasn't already granted. I mean, you guys yourself in the last 6 months have granted variances to this. It's never been followed since it's
I don't
put
think we've
in
had a
place.
variance for the 2,500 foot max on the lot for cumulative detached accessory structure.
Yeah, we just had one down there off of, north of Cinesam down there. The gentleman with the two roads, the building come in here halfway down the driveway with the tree, that was a larger one.
No,
It was like in,
1,800 square
wasn't
feet.
it back in like November?
On Mission Road?
I
Yeah,
can't
it was
remember
on
which-
mission.
Yeah,
There was another one on Mission that was
There was-
the
right.
ground area of livable area to attach storage. And that was a singular one, but my time here, I've not had a church meeting.
So
Just that port to that.
the 2,500 square feet, yeah, I mean, people can talk about, but that's a whole thing that there's no reason why it exists. There is no the bluff criteria, any criteria we already come up with, they already have to meet. The setbacks, the bluff, the sewer, you name it, we have to meet it.
Residential and commercial. Are they two different animals? So
Two different animals, but.
Well,
in-
sometimes, I mean, that's why this is, and I sent you the letter about this, and that was kind of the concerns that the citizens came with us, like.
Right.
They're building these big structures and they're gonna operate a business in it, or they're gonna build a large structure and it's gonna affect their neighbor more than it's gonna affect them. And where they're placing it.
Yeah, and I
And it
guess
just gives us a little bit of overview to be able to look into what, are you doing what you say you're gonna be doing? Not necessarily saying no, allowing it, but just giving us a little bit more leeway to give some
So we can no
recommendations.
longer disallow it.
Have the neighbor.
Where this table allows, or well, doesn't allow us to even entertain an application for a structure over 2,500 square feet in shoreland residential, even if it's 40 acres. With that cell being blank, this is in effect, a land use charter that says that that's a prohibited use. However,
so then
dialing it one notch.
I would ask this group, somebody comes in, wants to build a 10,000 foot structure. They meet all the setbacks, all the criteria, everything. And it gets voted down. Why? Then all this does is allow the city to say yes or no to somebody because of this, just because I don't think you need 10,000 square feet. I don't, putting two boats.
Subjective analysis should not be part of the.
I know, but that's what this opens up to be. All I'm saying is it's a slippery slope. It doesn't exist. There's a reason why it doesn't exist at the county level. So back to, if we're trying to follow the county, if, I
You're
would,
saying, so you're saying it should be over the counter permit? not
correct, yeah.
Be done.
I would encourage if we're taking a month and stuff or whatever too, like if anybody wants to have this conversation, why this doesn't exist at the county, that would be a great conversation to have with other people. It just creates all sorts of issues.
I mean, we can ask Chris that, but he liked it when we brought it up to him. He said, keep it. I don't know what
He says is that the county does not regulate accessory structures in this manner. I don't recommend any changes to the city ordinance in this area. Other places in his summary document here, he talks about how the county is a rural entity. Most of its land holdings and population base is in a rural community versus an urban setting that is a city business and city locality. as we have zoning designations that parse out our residential uses and our commercial uses, I think that the goal of allowing this regulation would be to mitigate the spread of commercial uses into the residential district where, like you said in your letter, that would not be the intent. Dialing it back one notch and seeing it for a while, and then coming back to it and taking another strike at it would be my recommendation versus an extreme measure of complete striking it in the regard of all of that discussion. Again, the conditional use permit allows us to review it and apply a condition if it's warranted. And we should not be applying conditions or nominating conditions that aren't relevant to the impact that could be on the neighboring properties.
So that right there, though, has never been able to be reined in the city. That's why this came about. This came about after a structure was built in somebody's backyard. Bottom line. That's where it came in. So we have to know the history and what you said. You know, you guys aren't always going to be on the board. So other people that have been on the board, that is where the rub comes in. That whole reining in, we should be objective, whatever, that has never been able to be controlled. Now, I think you're three very different individuals versus let's back this up a few years with this more of a hot topic. That right there, what Steven said, hasn't been viewed by the people in your chairs, and that's where it gets slippery. Because then it is dependent upon who's sitting in the chairs. I'm just saying, that's the past history with it. And that's where the trouble comes. You know,
It was a swing of the pendulum towards something extreme for regulation. And in an effort to tie such, a metaphorical pendulum of development and ordinance that does this to avoid whiplash in our ordinance, we already know that it was pushed this far. In order to tie it down, it'd be my vision to one notch at a time and take it. Even if we did change the 2,500 square feet, maybe 4,000. I don't know. It's up to you guys to decide how you want me to, what ordinance you want me to administer and enforce. But sounds like there's a lot of thought, and I would encourage marinating on it, like Joseph. Think about it. Reach out to members of the county. I would encourage you collectively to avoid amongst yourselves any conversation that would be in violation of open meeting law to that regard. So, but seek independent counsel and find what you guys think.
I won't keep going, but I do see both sides of it. To me, I'm one of those that I don't like how sometimes things are so restrictive as to what you can do. I mean, again, if you meet the impervious, if you meet all the setbacks, you should be able to build what you want. You know, that's where I'm at, but I just like to hear both sides because I'm still fairly new to this, so.
Well, so far it's been constructive, I think, conversation.
yeah, I don't, it's just,
Get to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
still early yet.
Impervious coverage limits and percent land area. Recommendation from Chris Pence was to eliminate the 20% for natural environment lakes and to allow 25% on that in harmony with shoreline rule and neighboring municipalities. Within this same section, I identified the public and recreation as a hard cap for impervious coverage of 15%. Our land within the community that zoning is here, there, and everywhere, as we know. We have this land, there's the DNR access over here. 15% is not very allowant on ranges of uses that are occurring. If we think about City Hall, what's the footprint on here for impervious coverage for this parcel? Is it a nonconformity? Are we allowed to expand it? Addition of a range there, subject to a determination by at an administrative level with an accompanying document that justifies why. It'd be my recommendation to add the range that exists across that table and the determination to be made by the land that's surrounding the property that is the subject of the development. 15 to 90%, again, with that asterisk that is stated there as such. Adds a little bit of administrative discretion that says it's logical and reasonable to allow 50% because it's in the middle of the highway business district. If it's in open space residential in the middle of there, well, 15% would be the maximum if it's surrounded by that that allowance in its surrounding properties. So that would be my recommendation. I know we have a lot of talks at Park and Rec around developing the park over here. I look at that 15% as an ordinance conflict with existing conditions across our community for city-owned land, even our own land. An introduction of that range would eliminate any potential, for someone saying that you're not following process or you got your guys' footprints are exceeding this 15% everywhere and you don't care. To that end, we can still have some guardrails, but still have an allowance that would reflect the neighboring uses. My intent there.
So it'll allow you to go from 15 to 90.
Depending on what's surrounding. For example, this property here, very close to central business, should mirror the zoning district designations that surround it, in my opinion. It's a unique district that is here in downtown, and over by the sewer plant that has a lot of uses that surround it that might have different allowances. 15% is very restrictive.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's bad, but I think that's a bigger pendulum swing than the 2,500 square feet. Only because of the overlay with the shoreline district. And then how that,
shoreline, this shall not exceed 25%.
but then even like in the downtown, how with the stormwater plans, can you get an accurate stormwater plan on a 90% coverage thing? And so that's why,
No, and I don't think that the community should have that allowance without that guardrail. Not,
so then it negates the 90% right out of the gate. So I'm just,
again,
I'm in favor of it, but
well,
that's
there's
what
other
you're on
things
up
that could
against.
be, like the red tape of the standards of impervious surface coverage would be the guardrail on the accessory structure. Can you build out 90%? Sure, show me the engineered plan for stormwater that tells you that you are going to be treating that on your property without sending it into the road, onto your neighbor's property or into the lake.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I think 90% would be great, but I also think that it just, a bunch of these issues need to be thought through on the front end. Because they're gonna come right along with it, but I think it's great. I got no issue, but
Well, as I understand it, we're doing a lot of those strides as we execute things through the future. We're taking steps as a community that we should be proud of, talking about EDA, talking about comp plan, structure as a whole. And the last thing that I want to get in the way of all of that is our land use ordinance that would prohibit something forward. So, that's again, my swing on it. It makes sense to harmonize it with the uses that are surrounding it, and that range that language that I'm nominating there, I think would be what it would allow us to exercise that. Anybody else? Any more? No? Stormwater formatting, moving those bullet points back under shoreline buffer management standards. Doesn't do much other than formatting it and to be in line with separation from item number 1. Formatting, putting parentheses around for what section is referential there. Talking about sand blankets. Upland fill, this was a recommendation from our consultant that our ordinance only, well, it lumps residential and commercial together in its allowances, and he recommended copying form with the county on what they do. leaving what we had in the language and designation of residential uses. And then for commercial properties within shoreland, adding a metric for evaluation to grant over the counter a permit for 30 cubic yards for each 100 feet of shoreline, including that place as a sand blanket. Anything over, in both cases, residential or the algorithm for how much lakefront a commercial property has, would require a conditional use permit. So separation and allowance of an administrative over-the-counter pathway for a shoreline all permit in the commercial sector. When they have 500 feet of shoreline, for example, you would have 5 times the 30 in SIZ1 across that shoreline. If you have a plan set to do so.
When does that reset?
You mean like frequency of pulling a shoreline wall permit? I think our ordinance is 3 years, but they're good for 2 years. There's been times when somebody's like, hey, I'm not done yet. My contractor's delayed. They're gonna come back out in 2 months or a month, and it's still the season in which they can do it. My permit's expiring. Can I get an administrative decision?
30 cubic yards, isn't it? Unless they're doing it by hand.
And that's SIZ1. So this is like right at the lakefront. You'll see this, if I click through, it'll go through each of those sections.
So then, dirt moving for, repair of non-conforming structures, things like that. Within the confines of doing that,
Dirt moving associated with a land use permit
you know,
does,
with repair of, so non-conforming structure, boathouse on the lake. Side boathouse caved in. In the past, city, if you're repairing the structure, there is no permit required to repair the structure. Also to that
the Minnesota statute protection for non-conformity.
non-conformity and the amount of dirt moving within reason to make that repair does not fall in that category. Is it still written that way?
Our ordinance, again, just touches on if the dirt moving is associated with a land use permit. So if the activity requires a permit, it's exempt. If the activity does not require a land use permit, it requires a shoreline wall permit just for the dirt moving. So in a case where the sidewall on a boathouse, a pre-existing non-conforming structure, caves in, and the landowner wants to repair it before that gets, completely unusable. Minnesota statute 462-357 allows for the repair, rehabilitation, and replacement of pre-existing non-conforming structures. In that regard, all that the landowner would have to do is approach me and get a shoreline all permit for, I need 2 truckloads of dirt to come in and regrade it once I'm done with my foundational work. And to that end, I would look at it just from a shoreline all permit perspective for dirt moving allowances and landscaping, whatever additional uses would propose. And
So you would now require a permit for that action.
I would require a shoreline all permit for that. And I would argue that our ordinance says that would be required in any case.
Okay, because in the past, that has not been required by the city of Nisswa. Just.
There might be a lot of that in administrative turnover, especially of a single department person.
Sure, I'm just saying the state rules say this, it hasn't been required before. And so I just want to make sure that the language is all clear, so everyone knows, because that will also be a rub with people.
That would be how our ordinance currently does it in my interpretation, and has not been changed since I've been.
Right, I guess, yeah, with that, then we don't need to get into it, but I want it. So it's not open for interpretation and just written black and white somewhere.
So you'll see in there different classifications of water bodies: general development, recreational development, natural environment, tributaries, tributary river / stream, forest river / stream, remote river / stream. So those allowances would then apply to those commercial properties that exist along those specified in our lakes and river designations above. Previous section. So it's referential for those allowances and algorithms and reach. SIZ2, Same as SIZ one, except the allowance is 50 feet, not 30 feet, and reflected again in that same language beneath. SIZ 250, SIZ 130, rear lot zone is 100 cubic yards. Same algorithm, residential to commercial and.
Can you move up on a page? A little bit more.
Yep.
Okay.
You'll see that the widths in that algorithm for what the criteria is reflective of lot width minimums for shoreline rule for subdivision.
And to clarify, dirt moving is defined by bringing new dirt on to the property or off the property, not just moving it from point A to B, move 25-yard dirt pile from this location to this location and then back. That's only 25 yards, or now you've moved 50. How is that defined within the dirt moving? And is that defined, I guess? Because different people in different jurisdictions define that different. Some
And it's
define it
probably
as
been
25
both
and
ways.
some define it as 50.
I don't think our ordinance directly conflates that, but we could look under dirt moving in our definitions to see if it talks about removal or replacement. To me, if you're removing atop a hill and taking it off site, that is still dirt moving on that same property.
My interpretation and how the county does it is anytime you touch it.
Yes.
Dirt moving.
That too.
Yep, that's the common practice of.
Every place defines it differently.
No, I'm just
It
saying
really
that's what
comes
the
down to
county
how you're
standard is,
defining
but
it.
Right.
To that end, it'd probably be fair to pair this against Minnesota Rule 6120 shoreline rule. And acknowledge the fact that we can't be less restrictive than that rule. If that rule states that anytime you touch it, then that should be the application of our language.
Yeah, I'm just saying it probably needs defined because it's different everywhere.
My recommendation would be akin to then anytime you touch it for that definition. And that doesn't disallow you from a project that would exceed that. It would then pivot to planning commission review for final approval, subject to conditioning, oversight. That puts me back out there to make sure that the soil erosion control is in place, as they should be doing with permits in general.
30 cubic yards, that's like 2 dump trucks. Is that about what that is?
For placement
Yeah.
right at the shore.
The problem is anytime you touch it, you have loose dirt. You go across with the skid steer and you back drag it. Well, you just touched it once. You drive back across, you back drag it. How many cubic yards of dirt did you touch?
I wouldn't
It is
call it as an
easier.
inference. I wouldn't say
Right.
that you're bucketing it back and forth and things like that. It's how much from the native grade is no longer there. And how much has been deposited where the grade was lower. At the end of the project.
Right. It's easier to define and regulate by removal off the property, removal onto the property. I went out and I bought 2 dump truck loads of dirt and brought in. That's a physical change. You dig a hole, dig a tree in your yard, you move a little bit dirt, you put it all back, nothing's brought on, nothing's brought off. It's a net zero.
So we do have this section within our dirt moving, grading, it's all in the shoreland area. I want to just mention a notion about steep slopes. Steep slopes are prohibited or are protected in shoreland for vegetation removal. Steep slopes are defined as 12% slopes. And so grading activity that flattens that jeopardizes the vegetative status of our shoreline. That's why we apply it everywhere in the county and other municipalities to that end, just so that we can have that conversation out with landowners. What exactly are you intending to do? Where are you intending to grade?
I thought we got rid of that 12% already. Is that still in there?
It's in there as far as steep slopes. What we addressed was 12% in regards to subdivision and our lot areas. The language that was stricken in the last revision talked about lands that are below the OHW, lake bed, wetlands, and steep slopes. was in there, shall not be considered in the minimum area of the lot. What that does is does not allow somebody that has the ability elsewise to subdivide a property when the slopes and the topography undulates on itself. You might have a 90,000 square foot lot, for example, that if you apply building setbacks on there, the buildable area on that, because shoreline rule doesn't negate you from putting a structure in a steep slope, it just protects the vegetation there out absent a land use permit. When you have that language in there, again, you might have 90,000 square feet. That is the parameters of the lot. Once you subtract building setbacks from section 20-89, you might have 80,000 square feet. If you have slopes that undulate on there, you could have 80,000 buildable, and your lot area that is considerable for subdivisions is 10,000 square feet because of all the undulations, and you removed all the area that could be entertained for subdivision. So that was the intent of striking the steep slope from our subdivision.
Yeah, because it specifically Roy's Landing, hot topic. Schaefer's development. I mean, I could list off time and time again, and I thought that 12% needs looked at, and in my opinion, it needs stricken. Right?
From
Yeah.
general meets and bounds subdivision, it effectively has.
It needs to be stricken from everywhere.
Steep slopes are defined by shoreline rule.
Right? It needs to be.
It may be less restrictive than the state.
Okay, it needs to be looked at and addressed and redone because it has been a huge issue for the city.
Oh.
I'm just saying that'd be another one that we're gonna wanna look at.
To most effectively implement that change, it would be a letter to the legislature and say, hey, change 6120. The next thing that we have is retaining wall standards. There was a notion around natural boulder walls. Recommendation from our consultant was to clarify that natural rock boulder walls can not be engineered and shall be exempt from the engineering requirement of walls that exceed 4 feet in height. If we had a retaining wall in shoreland that was 8 feet right now, it'd have to go through a variance. And part of that language that's existing would say that you have to engineer your boulder wall. Well, you can't do that, is the argument. And so that clarifies for those that are proposing the natural boulder walls. Consultant recommendation. Any questions?
No.
Removal of a hyphen there. Moving on from that, riprap standards. This one is harmonizing with the county. We currently require a vegetative buffer landward of the riprap that would be subject to size and determination by our SRAM scorecard. Proposing to strike that. And the DNR has standards for how high riprap can be and how much landward you can do riprap. For example, you can't do riprap from the shore all the way up to your house for many reasons. They set that parameter to 10 feet. Height, there again, 3 feet in height from the OHW, which is again a topographical contour for every water body.
Making some positive changes through this section.
Depiction of what that looks like. One in there. Our jurisdiction again is this way of the OHW, landward of the OHW. Anything below that, you got to talk to the DNR. Boardwalks. Consultant recommendation to clarify that boardwalk shall not be allowed a roof or a canopy. Boardwalks are the primary means to access water bodies where there's a wetland fringe along that water body, facilitating access so somebody can place a dock. Boardwalks are means of which people can access those water. So. Private watercraft or water access ramp standards. This was a reference in our ordinance that is historic. We don't refer to conservation design development anywhere in our ordinance. That has maybe been conflated with land unit development. And Chris's recommendation was to strike that, replace with planned unit development, and that is so executed.
It's a name again.
Regarding water-oriented accessory structure standards, we have a pitch requirement on there. In Chris's summary, he said he's not sure why we have that, and he recommended that the city consider updating that section to eliminate the requirement. Anybody know why we have that pitch requirement there?
I do.
To avoid a patio top of boathouse?
Once again, it had to do with individuals in the past in that chair.
No.
But yes, I know why it's in there.
We had one Thielen, we had to do a variance for his roof line
Yeah,
for that.
we're over there because of this.
Yeah.
But
Oh, sorry.
I can tell you later why.
Typo, introduce a F for the word facility. Imagine there's no
Facility.
concerns with that, yeah. Same pitch requirement, commercial waterfront or commercial, waterfront commercial, water-oriented accessory structures, that was multiple. Propose the same, elimination of that. Patios, we referred to section 20.66. That's the old nomenclature for how we organized our ordinance. I replaced it with the correct section talking about water-oriented accessory structures from the one we just talked about. So reference change there. Formatting here, and introduction of something related to his swimming pool recommendation below. His recommendation would be that the combined footprint of patios, swimming pools, and hot tubs in SIZ 2, second half of the structural setback, shall not exceed 400 square feet. Because it's pertaining to this section, I'll move on to section 20-145.
That cumulative.
Yeah. Yep, combined footprint.
Okay.
Yep. Swimming pool standards. This one was interesting. We required a shoreline alteration permit for swimming pools located above or below the ground, meeting all setbacks. So when I read that, I think, okay, I have a non-riparian property. I need to get a shoreline alteration permit for that. I replaced that with land use permit for that reason. It's not necessarily always shoreline, and so I called it a land use permit instead. Above ground hot tubs shall not require a permit, but shall meet setbacks. Again, in the rear lot zone, meeting all setbacks, non-riparians, you can get place a hot tub.
So does that say that in there? So basically 75 feet or farther back, no permits required, just like patios or
Hot tub as long as it's above ground. The second
So
sentence.
swimming pool, patios, all that stuff, 75 feet or farther back, just like at the county, does not require a permit. Correct? Is that what that's saying?
No, not necessarily. Swimming pools located above or beyond below ground currently require a shoreline alt permit, meeting all setbacks. That's current ordinance language. We require a permit, whether it's above, whether it's below, you need a shoreline alteration permit. My pivot to that would be to, if we want to permit those things, to call it a land use permit, which would be more appropriate in my mind. If it's not always a shoreline thing, if it's
Right,
if it's an
yeah,
SIZ
it's not
1
even-
or 2, then
What
it's
happens if it's not even on the water? I mean, this is the swimming pool standard, so.
if it's within shoreland, which is this residential shoreland, and again, this is residential more than it is commercial, this would require a permit for that thing.
Yeah, no, so 75 feet or farther back, no permits required. Cause once again, it's just like, kind of like 2,500 square feet. If you're meeting the setback and you're meeting the requirements where there's not the limitations of this again, Why require permits? Why require this? Because you're already meeting your pervious coverage on your plan, you're meeting your side yard setback, you're meeting all these other requirements. And so just like at the county, if you're doing stuff and it's past the setback, 75 feet or farther past, you don't have permits for all that stuff. So why would we?
What was the purpose of this one with Chris? Do you remember?
His statement says that the city ordinance requires that all pools need to meet structure setbacks. The county allows a pool in SIZ two, second half of the setback, that does not exceed 400 square feet, which is the same size as a patio allowed in SIZ two. I recommend that the city consider updating this section of the ordinance to align with the county ordinance.
Sure, so if it's in SIZ two, but then we need language saying if it's outside of that, then there's not,
No.
because it doesn't specify. It's too ambiguous the way that it's written.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that.
Over below ground and below ground hot tubs shall require. What we could think about is,
Once again, we don't have to figure that out right now, but
well, for the purpose of this, I'll just try it. We'll see it and I'll undo it so that we can keep the red line version the same. But if we wanted language that could replace it, something like that. So swimming pools located above or below and hot tubs located above or below. Shall not require a permit, but shall meet the requirements applicable to accessory structures. I think that's what you're getting at, is something that doesn't say, it says you don't need a permit, essentially.
correct, yeah. Somebody wants to put a pool in their yard and it's 300 feet off the water, put a pool in your yard, you know?
Okay.
So, yeah, as long as, I'd just say the language needs a little bit more cleaned up or defined or list out the different zones, it's not allowed in zone one, it's allowed in zone two, and zone
Right.
three. Is
That's
what-
what this achieves there, is that you're not allowed to put a pool right on the lake shore.
So then let's add zone three to it.
Rear lot zone,
Yeah, or the real lot zone.
that's meeting all setbacks.
Well,
Which
yeah.
would be the allowance with a permit for a hot tub, but meeting all setbacks. So anything meeting all setbacks is akin to rear lot zone in shoreline.
Yeah, so it's clearly defined.
Talk about the combined footprint too of all those features, getting 400 square feet in SIZ two with that allowance. Same change in the land use charter above, commercial waterfront held that same designation here. And so any changes that are made up there should be reflected down here as well in the commercial division of our ordinance. So it's the exact same language as again what we had already navigated through up there. Formatting, there was a missing section here. We went right from section 20-171 to 20-173. This following format in other divisions, and it even says that under A, the purpose and intent of this article. That's the title of what section should be listed there, but it was not listed and got deleted on accident. And so I propose putting it back. No issues there. Formatting, deletion of the period, temporary structures. So temporary commercial structures, that IUP from the land use charter above, adding commercial waterfront, subject to the same standards of regulation for adequate measures to control power, noise, etc. All of these that are akin to that IUP criteria. Just introduction of the zoning district commercial waterfront for that use. Accessory structures in the commercial waterfront, highway business and central business district. We have in that accessory structure row of our land use charter a P and a C, but there was no performance criteria that designate when a permit is required versus a conditional use permit being required. Of the 3 commercial districts, I akin it to pairing in and partnering with the highway business district for the allowance of separation there. If you want to propose an accessory structure not exceeding 200 square feet, It's an over-the-counter land use permit, it just has to meet the other requirements of the ordinance. Similar to highway business, if you wanted a structure exceeding 200 square feet, you have to do a conditional use permit for that pathway.
So. Okay. Fish houses.
Temporary, and they're just being stored. If they're being used, if that's being occupied outside of like a temporary basis, which would be an administrative fiasco for someone like me trying to enforce something like that. It's been generally interpreted that as long as it's not being discernibly occupied, and like if you have a deck that you build onto your parked fish house with a grill on it, well, that's an intense use, probably not in harmony with what somebody might say is just stored there or staged there even in summer months when it can't be used up on a beach or a shore.
So no permit.
For buying a RV or a fish house or anything like
For
that.
storing it.
My interpretation for permitting, no, there's language in here of where those things should be stored.
That was my next question.
That
changed.
No, not in this phase, Joe.
All right, well, goes hand in hand again.
We'll need to buy breakfast here pretty soon.
No, I'm just. It's just, you know, if you get into that, and then the next spot is where on the property, and that has created more of a rub in the city almost in the size.
That has come up.
Right, that's come up.
Across in the county, everywhere, you know,
So where?
right.
Just real quick on the accessory structure, I don't wanna buy breakfast in the morning, but. So like, for example, I inquired at one point about building a garage down by Lake Latitude that are building there.
Central business,
Yes.
you fall under this section here.
I was blatantly told I couldn't do it.
Cumulative square footage for all accessory structures shall not exceed 200 square feet.
Yeah,
And
so they said I had to have some type of office in it, it couldn't just be storage.
So it's just like the permit for the jewelry store. You know, with whatever they had put.
that was a conversion of the garage.
Right,
It's kind of like the opposite
Yeah,
transition of use.
But the opposite, but same sort of thing, but. The language needs to be changed, so. Things like that can be allowed, because
Yeah, it is.
it hasn't, you know, not just for you, but that's where the.
no, I know, I just always
Right.
I could never understand why I couldn't do it, but.
I think the changes should always, whenever
Because-
you're talking about these types of uses, it might be constructive as you think about these. To go back each time you're thinking about a change, read what the purpose and intent of that district is. Figure out why that language might be there or might have been put there extremely restrictively. Central business. I think the intent of that district is mainly for commerce and business to occur down here, not storage and more transient use.
Oh, I get it, I just.
Bring rural lanes.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Now,
I
if
get
your
the
floor
intent.
plan can incorporate that some of it is storage and some of it is more office of nature, if there's something that can be a finding by this commission that is a justification, if I make an administrative decision, somebody appeals and say, Steve denied my permit. I want to appeal that. Well, that comes to you guys and say, Steve, why did you appeal? Why did you deny this permit? Is there reason there? If they're not satisfied with yours, if you uphold mine, then it escalates to the next city council and so on and so forth. So I think that there would be a floor plan review of what it is, whether or not it's strictly prohibited and some discretion that currently
Yeah,
may exist. But with all of these things, I mean, we can use an example to say our ordinance needs to change because of this one time. That's
no, I'm not looking to do it I just was trying to I was curious as to this particular one of the accessory structures. It looked like on yours that it was either acceptable and or you could at least apply for a variance if you needed to, if you're gonna go bigger than 200 square feet.
that is the case.
But
Under
4 years ago, when I just made the inquiry, I said, hey, can I build a garage down there? There was just no, not unless it's got an office space in front or some type of retail in front and then storage in the back. So then of course, I didn't do it. So I'm not looking for it to be changed to me. I just was curious.
But also too, I still think that 200 square feet needs adjusted for reasons like that. This one needs talked about more because even right now with certain conditions in town, things like this still needs to be looked at with yeah, there's multiple.
An
things.
essential business anyway, an accessory structures process is a conditional use permit versus commercial waterfront and highway business where there's that threshold that separates. If it's lower, then it's a land use permit over the counter. If it's above, you're in the CUP bucket. So to me, an accessory structure, if this language existed for you 10 years ago, or just an example, you would have had a pathway forward. You have to come through for a variance prior to a CUP hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a pathway here that
There
What
didn't
it was
used to
10
be.
years ago, I don't know.
right,
Right, yeah.
right.
Yeah, this all came about same time with you couldn't put your parking lot between your business and the road. Parking lot had to be in the rear.
I think our parking and loading standards still touch on some of that.
Right. But that's,
We're almost
I
to
think-
that section. too,
well,
isn't it?
yeah, no, we can keep going, but that's when all this stuff came about. There was a whole change at that time.
So in the last year, we've entertained 2 variances to that section there, the landscaping and parking lots. We established findings of fact for approval on both of them using a methodology of perimeter usage. One was the Schaefer's parking lot down here, and the other was more recently Northland Center for
Yeah.
landscaping within. We have a 5%, and our language was very possibly interpreted that that's exclusive to the perimeter. I would nominate language that would allow me to administratively grant credit for that, or if somebody needs to repair their parking lot and it didn't require you to come back through for a grading permit or CUP, that I can say, okay, I'm gonna hang my hat on, you're gonna protect 10 feet, you show me where, and we're gonna count that as area of landscaping. Thoughts?
Just so I'm clear, here's your parking lot. They don't need to landscape in the middle of it, but they could landscape around the edge of it.
Landscaping has to be protected through.
But they won't have to put it in the center. It could be around the perimeter. Is that what that is saying? Is that what you're trying to get at?
That's what that says. Is that what it should say? Do we want to hard cap that allowance and say that at least 2.5% in the case of credit within the parking lot? What would you nominate?
I think that living in northern Minnesota and moving snow out of parking lots and
Those curbs are a pain in the ass, right?
it is a very in landscaping looks nice, so don't get me wrong there. I'm all for landscaping something, but putting it right in the middle of your parking lot where you gotta plow snow around it and the extra expense that caused to the business owner.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that either. So I would say there can be creative things done around it, so it is more economically viable for a business to maintain and install a parking lot without filling it full of landscaping.
Right.
And to do something around the perimeter.
That being said, it sounds like you're favorable in that. Opposed to-
That's what I'm trying to ask, if that says that, because maybe I'm just not understanding the way it's written. I just want to make sure that it clearly says that, and that,
It
and
says
that-
that I may grant credit for up to 100% of the area in the perimeters to satisfy what it is, what toward that 5%.
so I guess, hopefully you retire in that chair. But with past people in that chair, when it comes into interpretation of a person in your position for that whole language, I would say, let's rewrite that. So regardless of who's in your chair, it's available to everybody. That would be my kind of critique of that. If that
I
makes
think it
sense.
does it.
I interpret it that way too.
It empowers someone at the administrative level, chiefly the department head.
Can we just say that this is the way it is and it doesn't have to empower somebody, is what I'm saying. The city just adopts this versus granting power to one individual to give the credit.
Well, it has to make sense in certain cases too. So like if you have a perimeter of your parking lot up against the lot line or an easement that you can't control, that's where you'd want to leave some type of analysis. I'm a very analytical person, so I look for those things. If there's a lot line or an easement that somebody can't control and that landscaping that you had to have there, you just got demolished because
Or if the parking
Excel
lot goes
Energy
up to
came
a
in.
road, like you said.
we're up against the road, I mean, you can't, so. That's where the one notch, this is a pretty big notch. But it still allows for that discretion to be applied. That's. I do sense, we gotta
I
have
see what
somebody
you're
that says, they can write an administrative decision that says, yes, we're giving 100% credit, here's why, on paper.
I'm okay with that as long as somebody else can't define it differently. That's my thing.
They could appeal, if someone isn't happy with the decision, they could appeal it to the planning commission and say, Steve was wrong, and here's why I think that. So I think that there's discretion and ability for somebody to say boo about it and go through additional review if necessary, escalating that.
How would you interpret stormwater pond? Is that part of the landscaping?
A stormwater pond? How do you landscape grass, shrubbery, trees, or ground cover in a pond?
Grass.
Sales.
Aquatic vegetation.
Well, maybe we could apply 50% credit, because it says up to 100% credit. If you're doing immersion vegetation, because it's not necessarily doing the treatment, the slowing down, the reduction of velocity of stormwater. Some of these features can be used for. So like a lot of times when you have somebody doing this smart in the middle of their parking lot, that's a low area conduit for a stormwater pipe that goes off to whatever retention area that surrounds that culvert head and screens that from people that are parking in that lot. Discourages people from going into that and tripping on it, kids jumping on it. Shrubbery in there is what kind of, if I think about it comprehensively, I think that's why. But case by case, and the ability to apply reason to a determination. Fair? Getting onset by the frequency of that variance element, so. Now the exciting part that you guys were wondering about, mobile food units. So
Now this is just gonna make me hungry.
Yeah, I know. I would eat some salad.
Should I go get the popcorn?
You doing that again?
Yeah.
Look, you're a trooper.
So my understanding around food trucks is that it has been a contentious topic. I had a conversation with the chamber this morning about the language that I'm proposing, the guardrails that they feel the community wants. So the purpose and intent, if you read that, says that it's to regulate mobile food units in a manner that supports local economic development, tourism, and community events while protecting neighborhood character and ensuring compatibility with existing land uses. Mobile food units are intended to operate as a temporary and flexible use, not permanent establishments, and shall be operated in a manner consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and local, state, and federal regulations. So that's the nominal language for purpose and intent for adoption of all the standards that would follow. My understanding from central business or in general is that if you have a restaurant and you see a food truck parked right outside taking the business, then that's going to make you frown. So I proposed a restaurant separation standard in here that except during community events, a mobile food unit shall be located at a minimum of 150 feet from the primary entrance of a primary restaurant use, unless that restaurant consents, gives you that written authorization for that.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
How I would measure that is as a crow flies. So not sidewalk, I wouldn't conflate the two, saying, well, if you go this way, it's 120, but if you go that way, it's 300, that's messy. Crow flying. Horizontal separation, similar to every other setback like our lot line, lake, all those things. Now, the 150 feet, I just poked around on GIS to figure out from existing restaurant uses that I could identify what would make sense to be a protective thing, but also not prohibitive in other districts. We have highway business down the way. If we propose 5,000 feet or something like that, well, all of a sudden that, if you propose a mile, it's gonna impact where you can do it around that area, and that's more restrictive. So this is very nominal. You can propose whatever figure. I like to think that most of the text is pretty encompassing of comprehensive desire and purpose and intent. Figures like this, 150. Should it be 200? I don't know. You guys tell me. Should it be
150 feet eliminates it from any downtown location currently, from the A&W to Main Street to Rafferty
Which if you ask those people would probably be desired.
so the 150 already restricts it from all downtown area.
Except during community events when, and this talks more about conversation that I had with the chamber and regarding what goes into our special use permits. If you have an event that's city sponsored to eliminate analysis that this should be a temporary commercial structure. Or this should be a peddler, transient merchant, and canvasser under chapter 8, which says that use is prohibited in central business. It specifically identifies it and allows for, separation, setback requirements, latitude for a community event to say, we're gonna allow it this weekend because this is a big commercial event. Subject with guardrails, but reasonably observing, other people's values at the same time. There's also a residential offer, 100 feet nominated there from OSR, SR, or UR. Again, unless they are operated as part of a city approved event where that proposal before city council should be very clear about where they're going to be operating it. Up and down residential neighborhoods, is that in the scope of what you're asking us to approve? In all these things, restaurant separation, residential offer,
So then,
blocking sidewalks under that traffic thing.
so then based upon that criteria, there's not a community event going on. Where would somebody be able to get a permit? So that criteria already eliminates, puts them down Church Street, puts them in residential, puts them past the school, puts them in residential. So it negates
So that's where we need to hone in on that 150 feet and find out whether that's reasonable. The 100 feet from residential, is that reasonable? For residential stuff, that can easily select parcels and buffer it on GIS and show you what that looks like. For restaurant uses, that might be a little bit more difficult where we need to drop up.
So do we have to worry about this for someone that has a graduation party in town and they wanna, the residential, and they wanna pull up a food truck? I mean, that's getting to be a bigger thing. Weddings are doing.
Yeah, I perceive that. Yeah.
Coming in here. Also too, we can't forget, pork on the stick, the Lions. You can't come into town. I'm not going to vote to kick the Lions out of town for everything that they do for the town, the community, the business is, to pull up and park right in front of the chamber and sell their pork on the stick. This would prohibit that too.
No, it would just allow them to
Or
get it as a city approved event or a city approved.
they have it on a Main Street and say, hey, the A&W, I don't know.
Who approves it? Then the city council approves the city approved event?
Yeah. But what happened, but I'm saying.
Outside of that, it's an overly funded permit.
It's not an event, they're sitting down at Schaefer's, they're wherever, what?
That's where you'd want to be careful for making an upper.
I think a little bit more,
I
thought maybe needs to go into it. I mean,
Oh, definitely.
I get it. Yeah, we want to support all the downtown restaurants businesses 100%, but is there a zoning area then, is it over at the community center? If you want to come in and sell your tacos.
For a wedding or whatever.
This is the zoning area you can do it over in that parking lot, you know, I don't know, you know. There's, there's different things, pop-up things, you know, I mean.
Great question, subject to review of a specific.
Mini donuts, right now, we've got the shaved ice permanently affixed next to the dentist office in the little Rafferty's patio area.
Through that interim use, because and I talk about that in here, so you probably just have to read more of the language in this section to really comprehensively understand how it would be regulated. We're just in separation stuff, duration and frequency. Would say in the same location more than 14 days. And at the same location more than 30 calendar days or consecutive up here 14, 30 days per calendar year unless otherwise approved through an IUP. So in both of those cases, and maybe copy paste unless this before this would be a good note.
So the shaved ice truck then would have to move every 14 days?
No, it already had an IUP subject to when they discontinue for extermination. So it's already got its approval so long as it continues under that.
Okay, so if somebody else wants to come in and do the same thing, could they get the same approval right now with this new rule? As the shaved ice?
Yes, yeah, what this does is it just specifically defines what, where.
Because you used to not be able to have them all, cause
Right.
there again, I called about having a food truck one time down in our parking area down there, and they said, no, they're not allowed. So, I mean, it's good to see this come in, to have that opportunity, but at the same time,
There's
respect
community.
the restaurant owners. You know, because again, I wouldn't want somebody to set up a boutique in front of my.
But if you have a big sale, big business thing, your weekend, you wanna add the little food truck to drive more business in there too, and you know, for a weekend or something, and the neighbor says no, well, then you're kicked out too, like, hey, I'm doing this as a one-off. That's where, you know,
I just want lobster rolls.
right, yeah. Also too, I think it has to be considered with the lobster rolls, if you think of the little food truck, if any of you guys eat it down there at Maury's, same owner, inside, outside in the parking lot, is there an exemption of that? One of the businesses now want to do that out in front. Does this allow that without the criteria?
Right. I think that when we encounter contentious topics such as this, the best thing to do is to define it. Rather than avoid it or conflate it to two separate different things like the peddler, transient merchants, canvassers, or temporary commercial structures. We should really take the hard conversation forward, talk about the standards and figure out what works. And it might be a trial and error thing. We might adopt 150 feet and realize we should have done 100. Well, that's simpler to do, but you build it one block at a time. And we get towards something that makes sense community wise. Another thing that I notice in here is that the use must meet all setbacks from 20-89. Well, there's lot lines everywhere. There's road right of way everywhere. That could probably use some clarifications in there that
Just delete it.
well,
Park anyway.
well, see,
I mean,
but it should be
honestly.
there for lot lines on a residential property. Let's say you have a wedding at your house and your food truck goes and parks right next to your neighbor's property. Doesn't meet setbacks. Should it meet the lot line setback, just like the structure for that use? And
No.
temporary structures need to meet
This
setbacks,
is
even if
only
they're less than 7 days.
For a few hours.
This is
for
a
day
trailer.
or
No.
weekend or-
So, yeah, I'm
Or you
serious.
put
That's-
if more than a day or something.
Yeah, that.
What if a
that's
friend
when
comes
you
over with
delete.
their fish house and camps overnight at your house? You're gonna want stuff for that, you know, like.
Same thing, we don't wanna start overthinking it too, you know, I mean, I would say we'd start with this, going back to the chamber, say, hey, go talk to Lions Club. Designate, hey, certain spots in town for nonprofits or whatever that the community wants to support, you know, also go talk to the Historical Society. They have the different food pop-up things. Are they gonna have an exemption?
I foresee
You
on
know,
the notion of striking it and getting it over to the DNR and we give them another version that says, for this setback, we propose getting rid of it. They're gonna push back pretty hard that says, no, you need to have a setback to the OHW. So that at minimum.
we don't have it right now and they're not saying anything.
We don't even have the
Yeah, we don't even have it, so
But all structures need to have,
this isn't a structure, this is
So-
a mobile vehicle.
we don't allow driveways, we don't allow roads.
But we're way overthinking it. This is a mobile food truck. It's got a hitch or a motor in it. It's not the same thing as a 10 by 12 building. This thing is gonna move down the road. So,
And there shouldn't be a road there anyway. If there's an existing road, then I suppose. Yeah, I just imagine that.
Again, you could put a
Jake-
timeline on it and that would cut that, so that
Correct.
someone's not sitting there. But if it's for more than 24 hours or something like that, that way if you have a neighbor that's.
Yes, that's here.
Gone.
Mobile food units shall be
Right.
removed from the site at the end of each operating day unless specifically authorized by permit.
That takes all the setbacks and
Yeah.
designated.
yeah, I don't. A setback for parking a vehicle, there's not a setback for parking any vehicle anywhere. I mean, I would say as long as you're not gonna get towed. I mean, once again, we don't enforce parking. That's not up to this group. So if they can park it there. Park it there.
I mean, I can see if you have two neighbors that don't get along, where this would be a big deal, but again, I don't see them parking a food truck there for days on end.
Get some free food.
Lobster roll,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
my favorite thing of all time.
I could go. But yeah, I don't, with the whole setbacks on a movable food truck, you're not gonna go to Lions Club and go, you can only park your pork on the stick if you meet all the setbacks. I mean, who's regulating the setbacks? Then they gotta come in with a plan, a drawing. I mean, no, I'm sorry, but we're swinging the pendulum too far.
So I noted that, a lot of these changes that we're discussing as we do this, I'm taking notes on, and so I'll try to polish that into the next revision. Hours of operation, 7 to 9, pretty broad, except during city approved community events or where extended hours are authorized by a permit. For example, if you have a scenario with you guys punching holes on the lake for the fishing extravaganza at 4 in the morning, and you want a breakfast truck for them. Pertaining to the permit, allowing some application of discretion.
I would leave the time open.
Midnight,
No, I would leave it open. I don't,
At the wedding or something. or-
if it's a wedding or like anything, like starting to put a time on it. That we don't have time limitations on other businesses. Why would we put a time limitation on this one?
Then at 9:01, they're still serving food.
Well, and then also too, nobody's gonna police it.
it's
So
not enforceable.
it's not
Right.
enforceable. Yeah, so.
How about the call at 9:01?
Yeah.
You gotta get out
Dave,
here.
Yeah.
I'll follow up tomorrow would be my response.
Yeah, I'll hear it.
Traffic monitor it.
The coleslaw is getting warm and the potato cells getting warm.
Definitely do that recommendation.
Yeah, it's just, once again, we don't, I would say when we start to put this together, not to overdo it with.
Consensus?
Agreed.
Site and operational standards shall be parked on an improved surface capable of supporting the vehicle. That makes. Want the guy to get stuck and all of a sudden.
It's not our issue, once again, not our issue. Look at the grass area again, over there, they pull them all in over there for the Stamen Festival or whatever they do at the Historical Society. Once again, if they get stuck, they get stuck, that's, why do we care?
Ice, or if they
Right.
put this on a pontoon boat,
Yeah.
What that language does is it prevents compaction on a lot that has already hit its dimensional impervious. Compaction, as we understand it, can occur on dirt, gravel, class 5, not just. improved
But
surface.
once again, we're not limited to any homeowner, business owner. You can't drive on your own lawn because it's creating compaction. I mean, it just, once again, way overthinking it. You know,
I agree. I gotta
with the
agree
line.
with that. one.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I just.
Right, yeah, just,
Yeah, all I'm looking for is discussion.
No, I know, cause it's like you start thinking like you do, like the historical society, they're all over.
they're all in what they get stuck. That's not our issue.
Or the compaction.
Let's,
Or if it's an event somewhere and they all of a sudden get 4 inches of rain, they get stuck. No matter if they prepared the property or not, or if it had pervious, non-impervious, or clay, grass. Still put on my grandma's flower bed, she might get mad, but.
right.
Was this language pulled from somewhere?
Yes and no, it's a combination of other municipalities. I did pump it into AI for some guidance on certain things, so just nominal stuff, trying to harmonize with Minnesota rule in general. I want to touch back on residential buffer for just 1 second, thinking about the lot size minimums that we have in the area. What's currently proposed is 100 feet from any OSR, SR, or UR zoning district boundary. Left out of that is Linden residential, where they have 50-foot lot widths. Similar to the restaurant separation, less authorized consent by that restaurant owner. I would nominate also putting in Linden residential because that's another residential district.
So,
Reducing it to 50. and
once
saying-
again, I'm super confused. Grad party, you're saying they need to come and get a permit to do a grad party to pull into somebody's yard or retirement party, whatever, in residential? That's what we're getting at?
Or we could do it allowed.
No, like, I'm sorry. I get a food truck graduation party. I'm not first gonna go and get a permit from the city. I'm just gonna let the food truck come out and do it. Like, once again, way overstep,
So a proposed.
way overthinking it.
thing that would say you don't
Once
have to
again,
forward.
Back,
That's when the land use charter comes in to be a.
but how do we regulate it and why would we wanna regulate it? Somebody wants to have a food truck in at their house, like, no.
So
We don't regulate catering right now. And the cater truck pulls up, how's that any different?
points. Why we have this conversation.
Yeah, so,
So the intent of that would be to allow a buffer from commercial use to residential use. Back down to it here. I promise you guys we are getting very close to the end of this.
You said that an hour ago.
Well, we've had very constructive conversation in my opinion, so.
I like them big and crispy.
So. When placed upon commercial property, mobile food units shall be located at least 100 feet from those residential uses.
Honestly, I would have something about the restaurant separation and the input from the businesses, the Lions Club, the chamber on to do it so that we're not interfering or it works well and everybody's in agreement with restaurant owners in town. And that's line A. And I would delete everything underneath line A.
I think C is important for ADA as we.
Once
think about
again,
that, property or sight lines, pedestrian traffics. You don't want to block an intersection and have an accident because there's a food truck there. That would be a poor thing for the community.
but once again, not our thing. Somebody parks their own truck and trailer there and causes an accident, it's on them. Once again, we're overthinking and over-regulating what we're trying to do. We're so far outside of our lane on this.
Is this just on private property or are we talking about in the right of way?
Private property. Right of way uses would be more like the transient use if it's part of an event or parked in the parking stall that's in the right of way. Private parking is subject to, again, getting that written consent from the owner that you're gonna do that full permit.
Why do we care and who's gonna enforce it? I know if you walk across the hallway and go ask the law enforcement, are you gonna go ticket the food truck? They're all gonna tell you no. they're all like, we might go and buy something, but. Once again, we're just, I think we're
putting ourselves in a,
yeah, we're trying to solve some issues that probably don't exist.
Strike to B, C, and D. Agreed?
agreed.
Right, okay.
To me, this big protection should be
The downtown,
about the
Business,
restaurants downtown.
right.
I mean, that's to me that otherwise, these food trucks are everywhere now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Hours of operation had that listed as strike. Group surface, strike. Operators shall provide refuse containers and remove all trash and debris at the end of each operating day. So provide for your garbage.
common sense.
That comes with them, I think.
Also too, you know, throughout downtown, there's garbage throughout down. I mean, that's just,
no,
Right.
I mean, that's not a big deal, I don't think, if you wanna
This
leave
is-
something in there, that's probably one that, at least they're not gonna leave their trash behind. But I think they would put it away, but you know, I'm also stacking it for the city.
And if somebody takes their.
I mean, couldn't all that-
And goes away, then they're at. And obviously, they're not gonna walk back and put it in that, but at that location, they have a refuse container.
But can't that be covered in E? I mean, all mobile units shall comply with all local, state and federal, it's already covered.
You can't leave litter, right, yeah.
But
Yeah.
that would be
Leave E in
civil because they've exchanged in commerce. And that garbage now is that person's property and that's a litter on them. Here we are saying that they have to provide at least a garbage container. Maintain and remove it at the end of the day.
Once
Guy
again,
walk-
who's checking it?
The guy walks up, grabs their food and walks down the street to go shopping.
And it's.
They pass.
Yep, community garbage down here, so. It's on them to find the container in all cases.
Correct.
A just stipulates that the truck has to bring a container with them.
Once again, I think E sums it all up. I mean,
We also want them pumping into a city connection somehow, some way. For D. We can't throw it out on that, and this language, yeah, it would be an administrative thing if I had documentation that says that they're violating. That they're pouring their grease on the ground. Then it would be a local enforcement if I had proof to actually chase that enforcement that says you were on such and such a day, this has been patterned.
That's where resident or business would call the authorities and say somebody's doing this and whatever it might be, and they threw the trash all over and
but again, maybe this is more applicable if we define a zone that the downtown business owners, restaurant owners can agree, like, hey, they can go and park all over here, wherever. Then sure, yeah, then don't be dumping your grease on the ground. You put your garbage, you know, but until that comes into play or we figure out the 150 feet, and honestly, for me, until we get more input from the restaurant owners, you know, all this is just kind of, not knocking it, but
Oh, yeah, it's good to really review the language that could potentially regulate it if community engages. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and that's why I took this right.
Oh, I think it's important.
yeah,
I
it's
think-
definitely something that needs to be talked about.
Absolutely. Let's-
yeah, it needs talked about. It needs figured out how we can do it and accommodate it, because it is a need in the town.
And if we start with a pathway that would allow it and decide that, hey, we were getting people dumping grease all over the place and we have no ability to enforce it, well, do an ordinance revision, but that adds time into it.
So if we're gonna try and encourage this and figure out how to integrate it in town too, I don't want it to be so overwhelming that then nobody's like, well, great, they allow it, but I'm not gonna
You can add
try and figure this out.
red tape if you need to in the
Right.
future.
Yes.
That make,
And I'd say once you'd see the first ones where you're going with the ordinance, then you might learn some other things and change it at that point.
some other towns successfully, another conversation for a different time, don't need to discuss it now, but a lot of cities have provided a spot or a booth for these people to come in and then actually have that as a form of income back into the city, whether it be at the parks or somewhere where it's like you pull up and you have your spot and you sign up for the 3 months of summer and you're paying a fee and the city is actually using it as a source of income to come back in. And then it helps promote or offset like parks or some other expense that maybe the city would want to look at, talk about with other department heads in doing, and then that way, then maybe a list of regulations would be more proper, a lease agreement, something like that at that time to quantify some of these.
I think DC does something very similar to that.
Yeah, where they have all the trucks around
Yeah.
Washington DC.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have it. You know, Quebec City, if you've ever been up there, they have all the little huts. You know, a lot of these bigger towns, they lease all those spots and it's a generating thing for the city. And so,
Yeah, I don't, I could see this really, if we started doing that, really cutting into the, because, you know, again, everybody has about 3, 4 months window up here to make money.
mhm.
And I think if we did that, it would hurt these businesses.
Yeah, and so that's some, like I say,
I mean, I
want
think
the-
it's good to let.
the
you know,
feedback from the
yeah.
business.
And maybe we limit it to how many even a weekend or during the week, you know, like you can sign up for a week, there's one food truck allowed. You know, so that there isn't, because as soon as this gets opened up, you're gonna see people doing that, but again, 150 feet is gonna help because it's gonna limit to where they can go.
And if there's, yeah,
Cause you got the Dairy Queen, you got
A&W.
the brewery, you got A&W, I mean, it's gonna be one of those deals where.
Right.
so
Yeah.
where would such a regulatory sentence exist in these? Probably a setback between the two proposed under separation requirements. No two food trucks allowed within a mile of each other. Something, I mean,
No.
that's
Because also too, with food trucks, so I bring in the food trucks for my thing. This food truck has the snow cones, this one has the lemonade, this one has the hot dogs. To make it successful as the whole event, you need multiple trucks in there because this one doesn't have all the stuff to drink that people want. And this one doesn't have all the food, it just has all the sugar in their truck.
Yeah.
So to actually do this and have 5 or 6 of them set up to be effective for any part.
But I could see you being in the highway business district, that's, because there's no restaurants that you're competing with.
No, and it's
You get
for
down
my
to-
own activity.
And when you get downtown.
Right.
To have every weekend it's like having 2 or 3 more restaurants open up in the city, which would, I mean, would be good for us, but it wouldn't be good for the business.
Right. So maybe it goes down on the new city property. You know, something like that. But that's where I think more discussion needs to happen. And I think it starts with the chamber and first get the business feedback on what they want to see.
yeah, I provided all this information to Callie out there, so she has it, and obviously we're talking about striking some stuff, and it's very infantile right now.
Yeah, no, I think
So-
it's great that we're having this discussion, so don't take it the
Right.
right way, you just start thinking, until you start going through this, you don't start thinking about everything until you.
You don't want to prematurely adopt something. Have the respectful conversation. See what you think about it. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it kind of redlined right now. I'm noting like pros from planning commission strike. If we're taking a month to think about it, we can strike my strike of it if we have second thoughts on that. And then take time, and even if we extract this from this version, say we come back in April and we're like, we're happy with everything except for mobile food trucks, we're gonna do that on a separate phase. Don't pass it through at the public hearing version of it. If we're not ready for it, delay it, go as is for other uses. Really, does that sound good to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
think they should sit in this parking lot during these meetings.
That you at the good time.
Yeah.
Just pull a little hot dog cart right in on wheels right in here.
Lobster.
With the lobster.
John, do you like?
Oh, yeah, I like it. The first thing, I'm going to Key West here in about 3 weeks. That was every restaurant that had lobster rolls. I got it all planned out.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
I'm right there.
Oh, yes, I do like
Yeah.
lobster roll.
Hit up the local
Gee, them
place,
cold
see
or
if they can
warm
do
with
a
butter.
Yeah, yeah.
Warm with
menu.
butter, yeah.
Permit and approvals, is required prior to operation. You can't just onset it and ask for forgiveness. You should get a permit beforehand. Issued on an annual basis unless otherwise specified. That kind of adds us, the transit use that right there allows us to pull the plug on it if it goes sideways in the community. But we onset it and it went horribly. The feedback from the community.
So pivot, you would have to build it also to define what that is. Like, yeah, I don't like this. There's 20 people lined up there. I don't know.
That comes through public hearing to revise this. Because this becomes code. And if you get enough feedback collectively in the community that, hey, we need to hold a public hearing and change some of this language, there's a pathway for that. We just gotta round certain wagons here and go through it again. In the permit application, they have to state where they have to show proof of all required state licenses, written authorization from the property owner if applicable, site layout, just depicting where they're wanting to place the thing, refuse areas. If we don't require them to propose it, we can strike that. And payment of an application fee as approved and designated by city council, their fee schedule. Typically that happens in January at the organizational meeting. If I had to pick a use in our fee schedule right now, it's probably the temporary structure, $50 permit fee.
There's something in there about insurance and listing. This,
That was something that, when I got feedback that said potentially we should ask for a certificate of insurance.
listed as additional insured too.
Well, I don't know, a mobile food unit, is that vehicle insurance just for collision and comprehensive?
No, they all have, I write, I'm a commercial insurance agent, so I write food trucks.
Okay.
And they all have liability insurance.
The certificate of liability.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna have, I mean, cause if they pull a trailer, they don't really have to have auto insurance. They just have to have liability insurance if they don't want to insure their trailer.
So your recommendation for specific language would be certificate of liability insurance.
Yeah, and that's something more for the attorney, but you'd probably want to have them listed just in case. I don't know.
Better to have that protective element in there before than later in wishing you had it.
So the permits and approvals, this is for like downtown, not at
All
businesses
that
or
are required as a permit. If we did A up there, then it's exempted. It's allowed in those residential districts for Joe's daughter's grad party. Probably still should have all of the applicable licensure. That would be then Joe's responsibility to make sure he hired a reputable company.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I guess going back to the insurance thing, you wouldn't need to have them. It's only if they're parked on city property that they need to have this one listed as additional insured, so. I was thinking that, but yeah, if they came up to my house, it's,
that's why I asked.
yeah, they
What
don't,
do you have homeowners insurance for?
yeah,
Right.
then you could just have it, just if parked on city property.
Yep. If any of these things are found to be in violation, there's the enforcement clause there. Failure to comply may result in suspension, revocation of permit, fines, or other remedies as Article 8 allows in this ordinance. So there's a pathway to enforce it if they're found in violation, up to and including possible revocation of their permit. Because we added 2 sections, clarified the reservation, moving it to section 242 to 424, sorry, to 440. That's what I had for food trucks, aside from definition of what a mobile food unit is, what a primary restaurant use is. Which will be the final elements as we get to them here.
So I gotta just ask, breaking this all down and stuff. The city already has the mobile transient merchant event coordinated license.
Peddler, transient merchant, and canvasser.
Yeah, we already have that. That spells out a bunch of that with the insurance and all that stuff that businesses apply for. It's $25.
How does that
What-
equate to this?
Well, I mean, this really got into the weeds, which I don't think we need to get into the weeds on 95% of that stuff, but why won't we just, add the restrictions with the downtown businesses and stick with what we have? I mean, we already have in place.
Do it. Wherever those conditions are, this is included in it, or.
But you'd have to define a mobile truck. Or mobile food truck or trailer, because.
Versus a peddler or somebody that wants to
Yeah,
sell.
Main Street ain't gonna care if they're selling earrings across the street, but they're gonna care if they. are
For-
Well, the
somebody
person
with a-
downtown's gonna care about the earrings though.
No, I know,
There's
I'm-
another
yeah.
store.
but see there, I don't think we have we have we don't have to look. Let's start that.
We already do have that.
So many
all
feet,
this-
But can this be included in that as?
So that is
This is already in place.
chapter, which is not how I would do it. It exists in chapter 8 businesses. We also have on-site sewage treatment stuff that's in chapter 28. Well, those should be more so in my mind in our land use and development chapter rather than
So can't we just cut copy paste?
not just like that. You can. But you have to also incorporate that into your notices and delete it from chapter 28. So yes, you can.
Sure, but
Right.
because I already have all these permits and I already function that way down there for, like I say, I bring in for my special events in the fall and stuff. And all this is covered underneath that other, so we cut
Conditional use
copy
for your
paste.
transient merchant park.
so are you
Right.
able, just, I don't mean to go down the weeds with this either, but are you able to have food trucks down there because you're in a highway business district as compared to central business?
I'm able to have it because I paid my $25 to fill out the permit. I don't know this.
I think you actually went through a conditional use permit.
Yeah, so I never need to get another permit. I'm covered as long as I keep
Right.
operating that. And so that's the way that's already set. So,
And that's an intense use as opposed to an individual.
Got it.
but also too, there is the different ones for the different uses, so like Crazy Days. That's part of that for everyone putting out their tent. That's what's defined underneath there. But Steven's saying that's in a whole nother chapter. But all this stuff already is in place. We just need to clean it up in essence and move it over here.
And it's been conflated and
And or put a bullet point is what I'm.
Right.
saying.
And or
Bullet point,
applied.
food trucks are,
So what I'm saying with this, if that's not being looked at right now, same thing, we can't look at this without looking at all that. And so that's where, like for myself, I asked the question, what about all the people that already have it? Cause I'm not the only one that has this. So like, what are we?
But going back to that transient,
Yeah.
that permit, those I'm guessing we hand out pretty. No,
rarely,
rarely,
Right.
because no one comes
you
here.
rarely get approached for a transient.
Rarely.
merchant.
so when we have an event on, sorry.
No, I'm just saying, we just gotta make sure separation, again, protecting the restaurants versus what's in the transient.
Verifying.
And I would-
Setting
I would say the transient permit protects all downtown businesses, restaurants, the person selling the earrings, the person selling the t-shirts, the knickknack,
You can
whatever.
do that in central business.
So that is an overarching one that protects them all.
Got it.
If that.
Without any allowance of a special event, really, in its current language. And so
Sorry.
I think we've
asking one question.
possibly exhausted. this-
Well, everybody.
But it's good to know because not many people in town know about this or that exists
Oh, right.
or whatever. People just don't know.
Not many people are knowing if we're looking at food trucks. Be downtown or at businesses, it's gonna happen, then you're gonna hear about it,
Right.
it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we get the input from
You
them.
probably could have got phone calls that you had food trucks down there. Likely not, but was there a contention from somebody you don't know because they didn't know what was happening or didn't know that there was a thing or wasn't a thing and.
And I think last year it kind of got brought up or highlighted when the Lions wanted to come up and park their truck in town.
Mm.
Well, that's, so there needs to be exceptions in this for, right? These nonprofits, the Lions, whatever, if it's a Girl Scout group or whatever, right?
Right.
Okay, I think that's one of the key ways.
Awesome. Moving on to subdivision ordinances for meets and bounds subdivision. We have in our ordinance title opinion and title insurance commitments in here. Talking to folks in the survey business, not just our city surveyor, engineer. It was opined by them that you could nominate the title insurance benefits both parties, the applicant and the city, into the future, whereas the title opinion is more of an attorney's, I think this, and doesn't really provide merit. So the recommendation that I've received collectively from those that I've talked to was that a title insurance commitment would be in more people's interest at the front end of those things to vet out that might have a title problem here. And like when you buy property, when you subdivide property, that same guardrail could be beneficial.
So I can see that if they do a blanket on the piece of property that they're developing, but boy, if they had to buy it on every property, it'd get expensive.
Kind of nominal language, but
Yeah, I would say not every piece of property.
And that would make sense.
the county's now having me stamp every single deed that comes back from a subdivision due, which stamp and sign it. As long as it's the same legal description that was on the survey. With a red letter. And again, you probably don't have to opine on that now. Think about it. Just a recommendation that I received and forward to you guys. For whatever. Second on our final plat process. Same recommendation. Same language.
I just wrote down a deal. I just wanted to, every time we talk about a development, I think about it. Why, I mean, is there something, do we ever plan on having water, city water in this city anywhere? Anytime? The question I have is when a new, no, I know. The question I have is when we have these new developments, like the one we were talking about tonight, could we not have them rough in? I mean, would it be cheaper now to have them rough in for city water than it would be to do it and tear up roads and do everything after the fact? I mean, I don't know what that would cost, but I'm just saying.
I can waive
Maybe it'd be a
this. There's
fortune.
been that present, which that has not been.
So the city actually adopted an ordinance that required you to do that a few years ago. And that quickly fell by the wayside, but that was actually a rule that was adopted after one of the last Grandview developments that everybody had to do just that. But it ran into a lot of issues because there's no, I don't want to speak for you, Dave, but there's no engineering work done on the front end. What size, which direction it's gonna flow. What standard are we putting it into, all of that stuff. And so, yeah, it would be cheaper to probably put it in now, but.
Or
that-
require the developers, you know.
Right,
put it
but
in.
the cart's still so far beat.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Horse,
Yeah.
horse on it. City water. Yeah, I mean, if you follow anything at the council over the last couple of years or the social media after the meetings, you bring that up and you have some radicals that are like, Joe wants to spend $50 million because he said the word water tower. Well, that's
No,
not
I
true.
get it. I just was,
And so it's, it needs to be looked at. Part of the reason why the city brought the property is that is the location that the tower has to
Yeah.
go. It's the highest geographical point. If it happens in 10 years or 50 years, who knows at this point, but it's just like this. There's people in town that want to stifle that conversation from even happening before it can happen, I guess, would be a fair assessment right now. Is that a way to sum that up? But yes, it does need to be talked about.
Just was
Yeah.
a question.
I guess I would equate it, if we had it, to how we operate on expansion of our sewer district. Our sewer connections, if we had it.
I was just gonna say, a public water system has to go through the state for approval. So you have to prepare a plan, you know, so that sketch plan we reviewed tonight. I don't know how they're gonna lay out their water system, but if we were to, like, in the future, connect on to that, you know, how was it built? The state never reviewed it, probably, you know. What kind of materials did they,
I've been part of a lot of different developments, even like with that, and the state still regulates how that's done. You know, I know the development up in Ideal with a resort that went through, the state didn't sign off on all the pipe went from the main well. They had to excavate it all back on.
I had another one that we just abandoned the whole system and everybody drilled their own well.
Yeah,
We don't worry about that.
so it jumps the city and it goes to the state, and
Then you have oversight, annual reporting. All that.
Got it. Just was a question. I just was,
The wisdoms,
Yeah.
all fun stuff. We're not there yet, I think, but
no, I didn't figure we were. I just was thinking, you know, planning ahead if there was any infrastructure.
Yeah,
like the
sure.
developer put in to save the city money down the road, but
there's several people trying to talk about it and actually formulate a plan. We'll see how far that gets.
this one, kind of a, I don't know, a funny one. Bethany mentioned that she saw this and she's like jokingly, "You should leave that T in there." Ah,
Land.
here's my landscaping plant. It's so taking the motion to remove the T and say we need the landscaping plan for those freestanding signs. So that's what you're doing up at the base of it.
Once again, we've got to tie that into the whole other sign ordinance.
Could be. For now, my proposal is to verify it's not
I know.
planned.
But the sign ordinance needs to be.
Yep. And I talked about that too in my city planner report once we get to that agenda.
no, we haven't
We-
been.
No,
Oh, we're almost there, guys.
Oh, my God.
Fences.
Over at page 99 of 147.
Oh,
There's not many more.
no.
We entertained a variance a while back for interpretation of two houses that are very close to the lake. They're pre-existing, non-conforming 30 feet from the water. Number 4 here says all fences must meet the OHW setback, or if the houses are in line, no closer than the front of the house, whichever is greater. I proposed removal of whichever is greater, because I think that the intent of that statement was to say that if you have two houses that are near the shore of the lake, non-conforming, it's logical that you can build a fence up to that no closer than the lake. Or no closer to the lake than that string theory between those two houses. How it's written is much different. If those houses are in line, but they're 300 feet from the water, you can't build a fence up to that. So I propose getting rid of whichever's greater and clarifying too that we have our height requirement under 1 year of 72 inches, wherever they are, 6 feet. If it is going into, I should clarify, in SIZ, in shore impact zone, should be 48 feet, 48 inches in height, not feet. But that would then protect sight lines where a lot of our historic plats have north-south property lines on the southwestern shore of the lake, where everybody's looking at their neighbor's property. I think that's more so the intent of the pitch requirement on water-oriented accessory structures, as well as keeping fences behind that, so that you're not building a fence on a shallow topography that's going to block your neighbor's view from the lake. 48 inches to me would achieve that. and still allow it logically, that theory. Yeah, thoughts?
That's a whole nother can of worms that we won't get into tonight, but yeah, there's a bunch of issues with that.
Such as,
Once again, I mean, just as has been contention, you know, should you even allow a fence in there for the site views? Also, too, if you're gonna limit it to 48 inches, then for the site view, well, what about the guy that goes and plants a whole row of, you know, trees all the way to like blocks the view, you know, it opens up, it opens up a whole can of worms. What about the two neighbors, you know, that both agree to put in an 8 foot tall fence because they don't want to see each other, you know, but once again, we don't need to get into tonight, but there has been a lot of conflicts and interest with that, you know, also too in those areas. What about fences around hot tub areas where people want to do screening off their house? I would say this particular one, maybe more thought needs to be put into it and talked about at a later time.
fair to say?
Agreed.
Look at that, we got 3 more sections and then we're done. These next two are quick. Very quick, I think. But the recommendation from the consultant was to address our the lapse of permit and extension allowances in our conditional use permits and our variances, which is the next one that we'll get to. His recommendation was to change 12 to 24 months for somebody to approach and say, I want to get the permit on the CUP I got last year. If it's 13 months after they got that, well, kind of crippled them how I come forward. So 24 months.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Variances, same topic. A little bit different on failure to act in. In this case, it would say failure to act in alliance or failure to complete the work within 5 years versus 1 was the recommendation.
Yep, good.
And in all things, in an approved document that gets recorded, technically the answer for this is that that doesn't self-sustain. You have to have a revocation hearing. Community event, there's 3 definitions from the mobile food truck that I introduced in our definition sections. Means in a city approved festival, market or similar special event conducted for a limited duration. Thoughts, questions on that definition? 2 more, you guys getting ready to get on?
No, we gotta talk about everything else.
Mobile food unit, food truck, needs a self-contained, motorized and or towable vehicle designed to be readily movable and used for the preparation and or sale of food directly to the public.
Sounds fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna add something about lobster rolls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are we shoehorning that it's gotta be a vehicle or a
Yeah.
trailer?
It's a self-contained motorized towable vehicle.
So if I pull a little part out of it.
Like the New York hot dog stand.
Sure.
You know, would fall into that definition. It's towable, get a simple permit, show me where you're doing it. We should know how big vehicle.
Or if it's a little three-wheeler bike
Yeah.
in the road.
San Francisco, everyone sets up those things and cooks the hot dogs right in the street, you know, those little tables if you've been there. Yeah.
Were those bicycle pubs or whatever?
Kettle pubs.
Rickshaws.
Rickshaws too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate the levity, guys. Primary restaurant, means a permanent structure or establishment license for on-site food preparation and service within an enclosed structure. What are we measuring against in that restaurant separation? That.
Okay.
Oh. Yes.
With that, we're back to the beginning.
Whoa,
So that,
Amen.
Concludes this. Plan to bring it back to you guys again in a month after some marination. You guys have any feedback to me as I exercise that other side from what we did?
Making some good headway on it.
I think that some of these changes, all these changes are worth the community to evaluate.
They're all worth reviewing.
Yeah.
But then also too, we do need to still tie them in to like the sign thing with the plants. We need to address the sign thing and I would say we just need to keep the momentum going on.
I like to think of land use ordinances as a living entity that needs to be able to evolve and adapt with the needs of the community as we go. Down to the end of the ordinance here. Sure.
City planners report, our old business, we have none in city planners report.
So in the last month, I issued one detached accessory structure permit for that variance that we heard in January. I've also started compiling ordinance language for Article 5 or 6, sorry, signs. Pooling that information from neighboring municipalities, how do they regulate it? Had some extensive conversation with other planners and planning and zoning administrators, community development administrators, whatever their title is at other areas. What has worked for you guys, what has worked for us in the past is what language we've adopted essentially. Our ordinance has about 12 pages of sign language. Other municipalities have crunched that down to be more simple and easy for people to read. So that is a specific segment of the ordinance that I recommend that people do a specific workshop for. And dive into those things as this discussion tonight has kind of alluded to the need for. So, and I wanted to provide an update to you guys also that the communication tower appeal heard by city council on February 17th passed the motion to approve the appeal on the decision. And in that motion, they directed myself and the city attorney to draft findings of fact to present at their next meeting. So this is just a timestamp update to you guys where that's at. That's all I have for my report.
Any additional questions, comments?
Has the city attorney got back to you with any information on that or his?
There has been work done that'll come back to the council, not for this body yet.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.
Sharing up at the top. I voted for the tower.